My name is Russ Engel. I'm the director for Yuma County Cooperative Extension, and I just want to make a couple of thank yous and announcements. So, housekeeping, I know it's hot in the back. There are some waters and some coolers back there, so we do have some waters back by the back wall. Restrooms are through this door right here to the right. So that's kind of the housekeeping stuff. Basically, I just want to say welcome. Thank you all for coming. Want to thank Booth Machinery. When we put this announcement out, we were kind of overwhelmed with responses, and we quickly outgrew our facility at the Ag Center. Kind of a last-minute call. We called Booth Machinery, and they offered this up to us. So I want to thank the people here at Booth Machinery for hosting us. I want to thank Dr. Bindu Padel for putting this program together, and the experts that came that we're going to hear from today. I want to thank all of them. But with that, I want to say, we know the university, we're behind the ball, and we're going to talk a little bit on kind of the development, how we got approvals, but we didn't get our internal approval to work on hemp until about 3 or 4 weeks ago. So a lot of you guys and a lot of the growers are already way ahead of us. You got your permits and you've already been testing and trying things and putting plants in, having issues. Like I said, we know we're behind the 8 ball, so that's kind of the biggest point of this deal today. One of the biggest components is I want to hear from everyone here who has experience, who has tried things and has already put hemp in. We would love to hear from you guys. What are the issues? What are you seeing? What we need to know from you is, what can we do now? Like I said, I know we're behind, and there is so much unknown about growing hemp right now. So we need to hear from you guys. What's the most important thing? What's the most critical thing? I know it's all important and it's all critical, but what is the most important thing right now that you need answers on so we can start working on it? Hopefully we'll get a lot of answers today, and like I said, I want to thank the experts that are coming here to give us some information and help get this ball rolling. So where we're at in the process, we have permission to consult, go out in the field, do lab work on hemp, but we're still waiting for our permit to even be able to grow hemp on our ag station and do trials on the ag station. That should be coming, I think, very shortly. I think I was told last week, hopefully it'd be done in a week or so. So, you know, hopefully very soon we'll have the approval to be able to grow hemp and do experiments on the station and hopefully get some answers for you guys. With that, is the sound system okay? Can everybody hear okay? All right, I'm going to turn this over now to the people who have the knowledge. So I'm going to turn it over first to Dr. Bindu Podel, and she, like I said, she is our plant pathologist in Extension, along with Mike Matheron, who is also here today. But Bindu is the one that put this thing together, so I want to thank her and introduce Dr. Bindu Podel. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Bindu Podel, and I'm the Extension plant pathologist with University of Arizona Cooperative Extension. So for today's program, we have 5 speakers. Brian McGrew from the Department of Ag, and Dr. Angela Post from North Carolina State University, Dr. Matthew Brecht from Marone Bioscience, Sherry McLean, she is the president of IS Laboratories based in Phoenix. I know, at the end it's gonna be me. So just an overview of the agenda today. Brian is gonna go first, and then Angela. In all of your seats, you have 2 papers. One is for your physical address is optional. If you want to fill up, you can. If you don't want to, it's okay. And the most important is the second paper is the survey. Please, please, please fill it out. You need to turn in those papers to get your lunch. And after that, Matt is going to talk about disease and insect in hemp, trials and tribulations, laboratory perspective by Sari, and then I'll end the talking part with the industrial hemp production in the desert. And then we're going to have panel discussion after that. We really encourage you, all of you, to ask questions, answers. If you have, please answer them. And we also have Casey Mahoney, who is starting an extraction plant based in Phoenix, and he wants to meet the growers, and any questions you may have in terms of extraction, he's willing to answer in the discussion panel. So I will let Brian go ahead and give his presentation.
Good morning and thank you. Again, as this workshop looks like it had a great turnout, and I really hope to see more of these types of workshops popping up across the state, especially as the university comes on board and starts being able to develop some research components for the research on industrial hemp in the state. Just to touch on Russell's initial comment on being a little behind the 8 ball on getting licensed. They are in the process of getting their license. We did receive their application late last week, so we will be working with them, working through some of the various topics for them to address on their application process. And so hopefully very soon they can be on board on doing a lot of research for this industry. A lot of much needed research that needs to be done. Especially as there is a lot of research that's been done in other states, but it's very focused on what they've done. Arizona is very unique. We have a very unique environment, so those perspectives may not pertain to everything related to growing industrial hemp in Arizona. So just to give a little bit of a background, I'm the Industrial Hemp Program Manager. I've kind of started with this program a couple years ago. Once with the implementation of the 2014 Farm Bill, the legitimacy of industrial hemp research, the department started looking into what it would take to have our own program. There was a legislative bill that was proposed that failed through the first go-around, but the following year they did finally pass a legislative bill that put Arizona on the map as finally having its own industrial hemp law. So, about a year ago is when that bill went into effect, and we had 1 year to do all the administrative rules that would go along with the laws to regulate, license, do the oversight for an industrial hemp program in the state. Initially it was based on the 2014 Farm Bill for research, pilot programs, and so we started doing that program development based on that sort of language. And then, as y'all know, at the very end of 2018 with the 2018 Farm Bill, and that had basically opened it up for the hemp production. And so as we looked at our program, realizing that the way we were kind of developing it was really strictly for pilot programs with eventually being able to do hemp production, we decided to shift gears and just do our administrative rule process for legitimate hemp production for Arizona. So once that happened with the 2018 Farm Bill, the legislature also realized, well, they wanted to kind of shorten that time frame. So initially we had a year to have our rules and a program established to be able to start licensing in August of 2019. With the new bill, our date got moved up to May 31st. So that was kind of a little bit of a challenge for us, knowing that we had to develop an entire program for the state of Arizona to be able to license, regulate, do everything it takes to start a program for the state. We did have, thankfully, an advisory committee on board to help with that rule development process. Dwayne Alford was actually our chairperson. I see him back there. And along with several other stakeholders across the state, that a key critical point for us to be able to ensure that the rules that did get developed were in the best interest of our stakeholders. So as we reached our date, we did meet our deadline. We were able to get our rules proposed. We did have started our application process. And so, this has been, not only learning process for a lot of the stakeholders, it's also been a learning process for us as a department, trying to be able to accommodate and, take everything into consideration on being able to license and provide the opportunity for those stakeholders out there that wanted to get started right away. So we went through initially, got through that process done. Initially we had a couple hundred applications. There was one key component that was an issue with a lot of the applicants was the fingerprint clearance card. Evidently there was a little bit of time delay in somebody applying and getting that card, so a lot of applicants had to wait until that did come about. But we were able to work through that. We eventually licensed. We have almost about 180 applicants or 180 licenses issued out there, and at this point we got about 120 growers that are licensed. About a third of those have actually began planting across the state in almost every county of the state, except for about 2. There's processing facilities that are getting up and running, so there is some development coming along. There is again, we are seeing it kind of get traction. We've seen some successes, and we've seen a lot of challenges that farmers are facing. So as you learn, we're going to learn. We just initially just got into the process of trying to develop our sampling protocols, how we're going to be out there when we go to a site, to the location where a person's growing hemp. How are we going to model our sampling? So we've been looking at a lot of number of states as far as what they've done, using that as a basis for a model for developing our own sampling protocols. So we do have a draft out there. We're just waiting for our final checkoff from our attorneys so we can get that established in policy. We do have about 2,600 acres out there that are currently planted. Some of it indoors, some of it outdoors. Yeah, the next thing coming up for us is we'll be looking to do the renewal process for the 2020 season, and actually appointing our advisory council, which will be the permanent body that will help us advise on the administration of our industrial hemp trust fund. And those funds are generated from the fees, the licensing fees, our inspection fees. Those all go into one trust fund that allows us to do the licensing and the regulatory oversight for the program. So I think that's probably about a quick, just really brief update on where we're at in our process of getting this through. And I know there's probably a lot of questions on, as far as what we'll be doing and how that'll affect you guys. So if we got a couple minutes, maybe I'll open up for a couple questions. Okay. Does anybody got any questions? Yes, up here in front.
Will you be opening it up to more applicants?
Well, the question was, will we be opening up to more applicants? So currently there is no restrictions on the number of licenses we'll issue or limitation on the acreage. So anybody can apply who does qualify. Yes?
Will the Department of Ag just be strictly adopting the Colorado products that have been registered for use, or are they going to have their own list of products that are registered?
So the question was, will Arizona be adopting the California's list of approved chemicals for use as on hemp? So the way it is right now, we have a list. We do direct people on our website to go look at the list. We don't have anything that's any sort of registered pesticides for Arizona that'll be listed at this point. I think what is available on their website is some of those the products that don't need to be registered. We will add, I'm sure, and again, as the federal regulations get put in place, a lot of the pesticide use issues will hopefully be going along with that. But I know there is a lot of research that had to be done through the EPA in order to get anything labeled. So that still will be a process that does take some time, and I think we have some folks here that might be able to address some of those issues and how that development might happen in the future. Yes.
Hello, Mr. McGrew. My question is, when we apply to this application, is it going to affect like any trusted travelers program by having it? Or would affect gun ownership or any way?
I really can't comment on gun ownership or anything like that. I mean, our program, as far as, again, in order to be able to apply for a license, you have to have a level 1 fingerprint clearance card that's issued by Department of Public Safety. How that affects any other sort of licenses and anything like that, I couldn't comment on.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you. I know we'll have an opening panel later on, so I'll be here all day. So if anybody does have any other questions, I'm available. And also, for more information, agriculture.az.gov, industrial hemp. You can search for industrial hemp. A lot of information about our programs on there, including the application process and lists of our hemp rules and our hemp laws. Anything that's new and upcoming will be posted on our website as well. Thank you very much.
And again, like I said, one of the most important things for us as the university is to try to get some information from you guys. So if there are any growers in the room and you stick around until the panel discussion, we would love to hear from you. And so before we even start the panel discussion, if there's any growers that would like to share their stories or their experiences of what they're seeing, the problems they're having, I would really appreciate that. So if anybody at that time wants to come forward and kind of give their story, if they've already tried hemp and they're running into issues, we'd love to hear that. And I'm sure there's other growers that are probably either having the same problems or are going to have the same problems. So toward the end, when we get to that panel discussion, I'll give an opportunity. If there's anybody out there willing to kind of tell their story and their experience with hemp, we'd love to hear it. So our next speaker is Dr. Angela Post. I will kind of let her introduce herself.
So I'm Dr. Angela Post. I am a faculty member at North Carolina State University and also serve in a high extension role like many of the folks that you all deal with here in Arizona. My real job is a small grains extension specialist, and I've been in that role for 3 years at North Carolina State. Prior to that, I was a faculty member at Oklahoma State University in the Southern Plains for 3 years, working also in small grains. But when North Carolina came through with their legislation on industrial hemp programming, they came to me and asked, would you be a part of this program? Would you start working with this? Mostly because all of the senior faculty were all, curmudgeoned in their office, no offense, any of you are here, saying, we're not getting into this is crazy town. And it's everything that has been said here this morning, it sounds very familiar. We're 3 years into our program in North Carolina, but we kind of started in the same situation, accepting the fact that our university was a part of this process from the very beginning, and we're not restricted from working on hemp prior to the farmers getting permitted. So that has been really helpful. I am going to spend a very short piece of my presentation at the beginning talking about the work we have accomplished in seed and fiber. Don't get up and walk out of the room because you came here to hear about floral production. Most of my talk will be on floral production, but we want to get through that seed and fiber piece at the beginning for anybody here who has a brief interest in that. Okay, so when the Farm Bill came through, we were approved to grow industrial hemp under state pilot programs from the 2014 bill, and now that we've had the 2018 Farm Bill come out, we're going to have a national program, and the states are in the process of getting their programs approved through the USDA, though the state will still be the regulatory arm for that. We have options to grow for 3 market classes. This is the one probably that most folks in the room are interested in, and I would say the greatest majority of the 2,600 acres that are out there are probably CBD oil. Yes? Anybody here growing for seed or fiber or interested at all? Handful. This is what it looks like all over the country, those 3 hands that go up, okay? So everyone else bear with us so we can get through this, okay? So also seed and fiber. One of the things that, one of the reasons I was approached is because I work in small grains and I had the equipment to be able to plant for seed and fiber. So it was actually a surprise when I had to go into this more vegetable or tobacco production system where we're planting on these raised beds, but it still has been a fun process. So I'll just briefly cover what we've been doing. We've been doing seed and fiber tests every single year along with our CBD oil testing so that once, particularly the seed market in North Carolina will probably grow faster than the fiber market. And we want to have data available for farmers as soon as they are able to put that in the ground. When we knew that we were going to be permitting growers in North Carolina, we went straight to the place where this crop has been legal the longest and has a regulatory body that goes along with it, and that is Canada. They have been growing this crop for seed for almost 20 years at this point, or right at 20 years at this point on a legal basis. And this is kind of what that seed looks like coming out of the combine. So you can see kind of the list of testing that we have. Some of these data sets are available on our website, or as they now have 2 or 3 years of data, they're being updated. We just harvested our grain crops last week ahead of Hurricane Dorian so that we wouldn't lose too much seed. In the fiber production side, we're looking at evaluating impacts of seeding rate on stem yield. So we're looking at biomass production there. We don't ret this in the field like cotton a lot of times. We're actually taking a lot of that fiber green from the field and decorticating it that way, and wanted to just provide initial guidance on seeding rates. So that's the main purpose of the seeding rate work that we did in fiber in the first 2 years. So we looked at 3 different varieties. CFX2 is a seeded type, Carmagnola is a dual purpose type, and Felina 32 is more of a fiber type variety, and we looked at all 3 of those at a couple of locations in the first year. Our soils are quite a bit different than you all's soils, so as I move through my presentation, including everything about CBD, you're going to have to kind of think about that in the context of your soils. North Carolina soils are very diverse, and so I work on everything from pure sands, mineral soils, all the way to more heavy clays. This was, Salisbury is more of a clay loam, and we put all of the seed and fiber material on a 7.5-inch row spacing. So it's grown much like wheat or some of our other small grains as far as planting goes. And here's what that looks like. This is the variety Felina 32, planted at 15, 25, and 35 pounds to the acre. This is the recommended seeding rate out of Canada for seeded types, and 35 pounds is probably the lowest of the low end for fiber types. This past year, we went all the way up to 85 pounds of seed per acre for those fiber types. 4 weeks after planting, you can see there's some sparseness in there, but we're starting to get closed row, and these same exact plots 8 weeks after planting. And I wish there was a scale in here because it's not clear in the picture, but these 8 weeks after planting were shoulder height. So they do grow very quickly if they're planted on time. This was a mid-June planting, which actually is a little bit late for our part of the world. Out here, you guys probably have opportunities to plant at several different times of year because you don't have such a harsh winter. So again, 15, 25, and 35 pounds per acre of seed. And then the fun part of this work, something that we were not expecting and that we were able to repeat in 2 years in a row. So as we increased the seeding rate, I've got the actual population at the top in plants per acre. So 150 or 160,000 plants at 15 pounds per acre, and when you get to 35 pounds per acre, almost 400,000 plants per acre. So no surprise, as you increase seeding rate, you increase population. What do you expect would happen to yield as you increase seeding rate? Anybody? It would increase, right? That's what we would expect here. It stays exactly the same. Okay? So this is 160,000 plants per acre. This is 400,000 plants per acre. The biomass yield was equivalent, and hemp is very good at this. It's not the only crop that does this, but many of your high fiber crops, things like flax and some of those other shorter statured fiber types, do the same thing with biomass. They're going to create the amount of biomass that they have the available resources to create and no more. What's going to happen is the quality of that fiber in the 160,000 versus the 400,000 is going to be very different from one another, right? Because these are going to be very thin stems versus these, which will be much fatter. And it's not clear which one is better or if the fiber industry wants it somewhere in the middle. I'm not a fiber person, so as far as biomass and planting it and counting it, I can do all those things, but I don't work with the textile group to kind of learn about those quality pieces yet. So we've started processing the fiber this year. This will be the first year we actually have fine fibers that are being harvested from our plots, decorticated and turned into a textile material, and we'll have some data coming out on the quality of those fibers at different populations. So then we repeated this in 2018, but we increased seeding rates, particularly because the fiber side of things, they want to see seeding rates up 55, 65, 75 pounds per acre. It does increase your seeding cost. However, it stretches those plants out. They do tend to want, for the fine textiles, you want longer fibers, not shorter ones. So if you can increase the population and stretch those plants, you're going to get a higher quality fiber. In addition to that, you get closed row faster, and with limited products being available, you get good weed control out of that. So that's why these are more sought after seeding rates. Just giving you the rundown of what we did for this, the same exact row spacing, 7.5 inches, planted a couple of weeks earlier in the second year, and at 3 different locations, a clay loam, a loamy sand, and a sandy loam. Across the state of North Carolina. It's hard to see the image, but that's our fiber test there in the different populations. Again, increased the population using increasing seeding rate. If you notice the numbers, we didn't hit that 400,000 mark even though we had much higher seeding rates. Soil temperatures were a lot hotter in 2018 at that timing, and hemp seed does not tolerate high soil temperatures for germination. One good reason why we try to use transplants when we go out there. For those folks who have something planted CBD-wise, is it all transplants or any direct seeding? All transplants?
All transplants
Okay.
this year, all direct seed last year.
How did you like direct seeding? Terrible. Out here, I can imagine you would not be successful with that. Once you reach, a high soil temperature, 85, 90 degrees, it just doesn't germinate, it kills the seed. So lower populations overall, even with higher seeding rates, but the exact same thing happened with yield. We were able to improve the yield with the higher seeding rate and the earlier planting date by about 1,000 pounds of biomass per acre, but it didn't matter what rate we planted, we were at the same yield. So that's where we are, that's what we expect moving forward, that's what we will expect 2019. Actually, my folks are out harvesting those fiber tests this week. So it really didn't matter what seeding rate was used, from 15 all the way up to 75 pounds per acre, and fiber producers should choose the rate that's most appropriate for closing row quickly and what length of fiber their processor is looking for. If you're going to be turning this stuff into hempcrete, if you're going to be turning it into animal bedding or car door panels or hemp plastics, it really doesn't matter what length your fiber is. If you are producing for a processor who wants a high quality textile, then you're going to be looking for those very long fibers. And that makes your harvest a little bit more challenging because those tall plants are very challenging to harvest. Questions about fiber? All right. Yeah.
If you plant more per acre, does that make for a skinnier, taller plant? And that's easier for processors? And that's what they want?
So the question was, if you plant more per acre, does that make a skinnier, taller plant, and is that what processors are looking for? So for textile, fine textile processors, yes, they want that taller plant. They don't necessarily want it skinnier, so they want you to be on that lower end of the seeding rate and push nitrogen to it to try to get height. And we haven't done enough work on the combination of those two things to identify where they want to be. The processors that are contracting in North Carolina right now are pushing a 55-pound seeding rate, which is kind of right in the middle of where we are. And this year I found them to be quite shorter than they probably anticipated, mostly because of a sparse stand. You really got to get every seed to germinate on this so that you can get that tall plant. Yes?
And when did you plant yours?
When did we plant ours?
Or your seeds?
So the question was, when did we plant ours? In the first year, we were planted on right in the middle of June, which is quite a bit late. This year, 2018, planted in the beginning of June, about the end of May, just a week earlier in 2019, and our processors who contracted in the state encouraged their growers to plant as early as mid-April, right after our frost-free date. You have to be a little bit careful. You may not have to be quite as careful with the latitude change from us. The earlier you go, the easier it is to be in pre-flower because the day length is not quite where you need it to be just yet. So that's what I would be paying attention to, is wait till that day length gets to the right place. You're frost-free, go ahead and plant. And you'll want to harvest fiber before you ever see flowers or as soon as your males are starting to flower. Yes?
So what kind of soil temperature do you have with that? What's the kind of best soil temperature? Because your June is way different than our
Sure.
June.
So I want to see soil temperatures 75, 80 degrees maximum, and they can be cooler than that. And you guys are probably only that a few days a year, if any. Yeah? No?
That's probably our coolest day. It's February, March.
February, March for you, so much earlier for you all. And your frost-free date is February. So yeah, just back yourself up to your frost-free date. The challenge is, what does your day length look like in that situation? You don't want to be pre-flowered.
Some of these guys want to plant next month. Can you talk about that, please?
Plant what next month? Hemp for what market class?
Flower, CBD flower.
I would advise against it. We can talk about that when we get to the CBD side. There was another fiber question back there.
The question that I have is regarding the seed population. When you said that you want to make sure that all your seeds go up in the quality plot. Do you guys study density? Is there any change in the different size seeds that you get so you make sure that you get good germination rates, or we see a lot of sparsity?
So you're talking about seed size and density? Yes. So the question was, well, you guys heard the question. I'm working right now with, there's a faculty member at University of Kentucky who's been doing a lot of seed work, looking at different seed sizes within a seed lot. And he did find that those larger seed in the lot were germinating better than the smaller seed in the lot. But I don't know that he has enough information, and I certainly don't have information to provide what is needed for that. Definitely buy quality seed. I think that's required of the U.S. right now. You're not going to be able to bring seed in that isn't certified in some way. We've been bringing in varieties from Canada. Theirs are marginal on the fiber side. They're better on the seed side. And then you have French and Italian, Hungarian, Czech Republic, all kinds of places over there that have some good fiber types. And there are some good certifying arms over there where the seed quality comes in very nice. I have not, so we've been doing germ tests. I have not been separating by seed size. I've just been doing germ tests just in a grab sample. And almost everything is above 90% germ in the lab. So it's your conditions in the field that are causing the problems. And not only soil temperature, but you need to dust this stuff in as far as very shallow planting. You're not covering it very much because it's not a super hardy seed being able to come up from the deep. And lots of creatures like it. So if you have birds around, they're going to be out there checking it out and consuming some of those seed, I would say, before they're germed. As soon as they're pre-germed or starting to put a root out, the birds will leave them alone. But until then, if you don't have good soil moisture, they'll come in and they can annihilate a stand pretty quickly.
What is the length of the growing season from seed, fiber, and floral? Is it a big difference in production?
So he was asking about the length of the growing season for seed, fiber, and floral. I would say the seeded type is, the seed and the floral is kind of the longest for us in North Carolina. It may vary here for you a little bit, but because it's photoperiod sensitive, it should be pretty similar. Fiber is short, and so there are some fiber folks who are trying to get 2 crops out in a season. Planting early, you're going to be harvesting at 8 to 12 weeks, so 2 to 3 months you would be harvesting, and then you would have the opportunity to plant again if soil temperatures weren't too hot.
I can answer some of those too.
Okay.
So for your CBD flower on average, is somewhere between 22 and 25 weeks. If you're trying to go ahead and grow this winter, you really should talk about auto flowers than what we have right now. But we can talk about that later.
Yeah. that'll be a good conversation for after bit. But yeah, the floral production is very long, especially if you have a long types that flower late in the season. I have stuff that I planted the last week of May, and it is not going to be ready for harvest until the first week of October. So some of those are very, very long. And I also have folks who planted in mid-May and have already harvested their autoflower weeks and weeks ago. So it kind of depends on your variety as well on that. Seed types also fairly, basically you're looking at a grain crop. So any of your grain crops will be about that length of time because it's going to take time until you get to full hard seed. I'll take one more seed or fiber question and then move on through this seed stuff pretty quickly here. Everybody good on the fiber side? All right, so I'm going to talk briefly about seed types. This will answer a little bit of your questions too about variety and flowering time. This is only a few varieties. These are not CBD oil varieties, though a few people will plant Carmagnola or Carmagnola Select as dual purpose varieties. But these are basically seed or fiber types and how long they took to get to flowering. So you have this group up here that are very short to get to flowering, and that is around July the 12th. So these things planted on June 16th, and they were flowering within a month. So very, very short when they start to flower, and then they'll stretch out. And then you have Carmagnola, Carmagnola Select, the two longest flowering ones, and those were flowering on August 5th, so it took them about 8 weeks, 7 to 8 weeks to get out to flowering. And you'll have the same stretch of flower timing and days to flowering when we're talking about CBD oil types. I do not have this same chart for CBD oil types. We're just now getting our last flowering data in North Carolina for the floral types because Bayox and Stout and Endurance just came into mid-flower this past week. So you can look for that on the website later so that you can see how long it's taking to get to flowering. And that's based on day length, so you should see a similar number of days to get to, this is your Julian date, so that's your calendar date to get there. It may be slightly different for here, but because these are not autoflower types, you should see something similar. Talking about seed response to nitrogen rate, or seed yield in response to nitrogen rate. This is going to be important because we're going to talk about this exact same type of work in CBD oil production. It is really not any different how much nitrogen we're putting out for our grain, our fiber, and our floral types. It's the same species, they are differing varieties, but they basically require about the same amount of nutrition. So we started with 50 pounds as our low rate and went all the way up to 200 pounds. This is a seed yield from a Canadian variety, CFX2. It's one of our higher seed yielding ones, at least in the first year. And this was in Salisbury in 2017. Seed yields were extremely low, planted super late and only about a half of a season time-wise for this. But once you get past that 100 pounds rate, you don't get any improvement by adding this nitrogen. And if I'm growing for seed or fiber, I'm certainly not going to add more than 100 pounds of nitrogen per acre because it's not going to pay me back. And we'll see that in the floral types as well. So in year one, in a very, very short season, only maxed out around 400 pounds of seed per acre. That's a fairly low yields. We want to see double that or triple that in a full season. A Canadian growing season where they're doing very well with seed production, they want to see 1,000 to 1,200 pounds of seed per acre produced. So that's where we want to be. Above ground biomass, again, topped out around 4,000 pounds for that year. That was similar to what I already showed you in the fiber types. And what I would expect to see for U.S. production, I want that to be at the 6,000 to 8,000 pound range. Again, a very short season, planted late June in this case, and not able to get as much height as we need. And then for the variety trials in 2018, this is seed and fiber. Everything in blue is a dual purpose or fiber type, and everything in kind of that tan color is a seeded type. Now, in yield, this is sorted by yield in pounds of grain per acre, and we see that those fiber types kind of fell out towards the top. Any guesses as to why that might be? Wouldn't you expect the seed types to be at the top of the seed and fiber variety test? No guesses? Does anybody grow any kind of grains here? Birds. So the seeded types are ready. If you look down here at this bottom of the list, you probably don't think about where these fell in the flowering date, but these fall earlier in flowering. And so they were ready quicker. And so the birds ate all of these and didn't eat all of these. So this year in our 2019 test, we blocked our test by flowering date, and we harvested the seeded types this week. We won't harvest the fiber types for a couple more weeks. So that was our mistake in the first year of data. Speaking of that, again, I'll reiterate, we want to hear from you guys. The researchers here will not be able to get the work done that you need if you don't tell them what you're looking for. And we're going to be learning right alongside farmers. That's what we're doing in North Carolina, what they're doing in Kentucky and Oregon and Georgia and everywhere that there is a program. So please share what you're seeing on your farms so that they can adjust trials and studies on the fly and not fall too far behind in what needs to happen, because this is definitely something we don't want to see farmers suffer with. We don't want those birds coming in and getting you. They need to get us, the researchers, first so that we can adjust for that. This is our first master's student, graduated out of the program last spring, Zeke Overball. He now works on a local hemp farm in North Carolina. He worked briefly for one of our clone producers in Durham, North Carolina. So having some successes getting folks out there into the industry, and we have quite a number of folks working in our crew now. His work was in seed and fiber. Now we have folks working in CBD. I'm going to move into floral production if nobody has questions on seed production. And Benju, just yell at me when time gets close, because I have no idea. I know we have plenty of time, but I'm bad at keeping up with time. Okay, so what you all, oh, that's lovely. It's nice. We'll see how many of those happen. Well, we got the top part of the flower. It's really pretty up there. So this is about what we look like right now in North Carolina. Most of our stuff is well into flowering, many varieties already ready for harvest this time of the year. Just to compare what you're seeing here in your state as far as the program goes, in the first year, what was mentioned about the number of growers and the number of permits was very, very similar to us in North Carolina for the first year. We had almost every county covered, but only a few folks permitted and only a few acres as far as that went. Third year into the program, we have over 1,000 growers permitted, 16,000 acres permitted, of which I think about 2/3 is planted. We had a few growers that got their permits in late May and June, and we kind of advised them to just wait until next season or just plant a little bit to try and see how try their hand at it. And then almost 6 million square feet of greenhouse. So our permit the greenhouse as square footage instead of acreage. So you pay a little bit differently for that. Last year, I would say most of our flower ended up being inspected by state inspectors. This year, there is absolutely no way that our state inspectors could get around to every farm. So this is the first year that we've started exempting certain varieties, and I look forward to that across the U.S., at least on a state-by-state basis, that some varieties that have either never tested hot or are very unlikely to test hot, and that's over the 0.3 mark, they're exempting those. So far in North Carolina, we've exempted 2 varieties. The state inspectors did some tests very early in the season on those guys, and then no one else who's growing that variety is getting tested. And then we have, yes?
Well, what varieties were they?
They were cherry and Baox.
What was the last?
Baox, B-A-O-X. And so that does not mean they're exempted here, just by the way. It only, this is the first ones that were exempted for us. And that could change. I will say in year 1, we tested about 100 samples. So, we had about 100 or so producers. There were 100 samples that came in, so almost everyone was tested. And about 10% of those state tests came back hot. So that means they were destroyed. Basically, that they get in our state, they get the opportunity to request a retest at their own expense. Almost everyone opts for that because it's very expensive to get into the deal. And then if they were still hot on their retest, the state comes within 20, or did in that year, within 24 hours to observe it being destroyed, which means that the farmer had to painfully destroy that crop themselves. Yes, sir?
How long does it typically do to turn around the test time?
Our tests are coming back right now within 5 business days. That's a little bit longer than it has been in the past. We were turning them around in year 1 and 2, 2 to 3 days. But it's a high demand right now, and they had to hire more people at the lab to be able to. So I mean, fairly quick. You're not going to get many private labs in faster than that either.
There's 5 potency labs in the state, and their turnaround time is 3 to 5 days.
Okay, there in your state, 5 potency labs, and turnaround is 3 to 5 days for you all. So it's not any different than where we are. And I think if you sent it to a private lab, you're not going to get it back any faster than that unless you pay out the you-know-what for it, right? Yes, sir?
And when would you take the samples? At harvest or before harvest or during the...
So you're going to take, as a grower, and we'll talk more about testing in a little bit, you're going to take a lot of samples, but your inspector is probably going to come sometime around mid-bloom, and I'll leave that to the state people here to talk about, but does that sound right to you? Yeah, so mid-flower, usually a flower cycle is 5 to 6 weeks, so once you hit flowering, your inspector should be there within 2 to 3 weeks of initiation. And then some states, I don't know about this state, but some states require you to harvest within a certain period after testing. North Carolina does not require that. Kentucky requires you to harvest within 14 days of testing. Any requirement here, or don't know yet?
Nothing listed out as a mandatory time at this point.
Nothing listed, okay. And I think, for us, I think that's, I would lean towards the, not having that mandatory timing, because it's once you're safe, your processor is still not going to accept it from you if you are growing something that goes over. So it's still going to be on your shoulders to make sure that it doesn't go over after the fact. Most of our growers are not relying on that state test to determine when they're going to harvest. They get the state test back, they're like, woohoo, I'm not hot. And then they still test every single week to determine their harvest timing to make sure they're getting the highest level of CBD and keeping their THC under. Man, we got deep in that before we ever got there. Yes, ma'am.
You said 10% of them came back hot. Does that mean 1 out of every 10 growers lost his crop?
10% of samples, so it was, as a grower may not have lost all of his material because he could have 3 varieties and only 1 on his farm went hot. So does that make sense? So it's 10% of samples that came in. Some farms might have had 10 samples because the farmer, it's up to him how it's tested in our state. I cannot speak to it for your state. In our state, if you want the inspector to take 10 samples when he comes to your farm, you can segregate it and he takes 10 samples, but you pay for 10 samples, which is more expensive because it's up to the farmer to pay for that. But 10% of samples, and where I was going with that is in year 2, we tested over 400 samples, and guess how many came back hot? 10%. And in this year so far, we're well over 1,500 samples tested, and about 10% are coming back hot. So part of it is varietal, part of it is environmental stresses, part of it is pushing it a little too far. There's going to be a lot of questions when we get down to the panel, and at the end of this, what do we do to keep it from going hot? We can't answer that as researchers right now. So you can ask, and I'll say the same thing every time. We can't answer that.
What is the limit for tested to be a positive? And do you have false positives? I know you need a retest, but do you often find false positives like what you might find in a GMO test?
Sure. So the question is, what was the limit for it to test over? And where did we have any false positives? So I'll answer the false positives first. So far, every retest has also come back hot. Every retest that was requested. I don't know of anybody who didn't request a retest, so I assume everything got retested, and the retest is in an independent laboratory. It's not the same lab. The state contract laboratory tests the first time. The state reserves half of the sample when it comes in. So they send half the sample to our private lab, they keep half the sample in storage. If you request a retest, they pull that half sample out and they test that in the North Carolina State Department of Ag laboratory. And so it's independently done, not done by the same laboratory. So that's been good for us. In North Carolina, and I think most other states, they're only looking at it at the first decimal place. So 0.3 is the limit, but in North Carolina, if your test actually says 0.39, you're still legal. But because they're only looking at the first decimal place. The legislation only looks at only describes it to the first decimal place. So it's just up to your state what they decide to do. Any thoughts?
0.300 for us.
0.300 for you, so don't go over that number. Okay? And it's kind of half and half, which states look at 1 decimal versus several, okay? All right, so now you know about what's been testing hot. Let's go back to the beginning of planting. So for us, we either start with feminized seed or we start with clones. I would say the greatest majority of folks in our state are still working with clones or transplants that were grown from feminized seed. They're just getting better luck with putting a plant out there versus putting a seed out there, particularly as they get later and later in the season. We did have growers plant all the way through the middle of July, which for you guys I guess would be the middle of April. It sounds like as far as time-wise. And so as you get later and later and that soil temperature gets hotter and hotter, you're going to want to err on the side of caution and go with plants versus seeds going directly out there into the ground. I will say this upcoming year we do have a number of producers who have already kind of figured out this feminized seed thing, and they're starting to sell a lot more feminized seed rather than individual plants. Feminized seed runs around an average of $1 a seed. And for us, the clone price started somewhere between $7 and $10 in year 1. In year 2, they were an average of $6 a piece. And this year, I didn't see any that sold for less than $4 a piece. So we're still around that $4 mark right now for price. Does that sound?
$3.50, $5.
$3.50 to $5 here, okay. So here is, these are ready to go out into the ground. So they're about 8 to 10 inches tall in that case. And then here is an image of them just first sticking. So they've got 3 to 4 nodes on them. They've been dipped in rooting hormone and are put into the plug. Many of our producers are producing their own transplants. We certainly have folks who are purchasing them, but you can produce your transplants for around $1.50 a piece if you're doing a good job with a little bit of loss here and there. So that's something to consider if you have greenhouse space or hoop house space that you can control the environment. Mother plant production, very different than your production in the field, and we see it in many different forms in North Carolina. These are just individual pots in the greenhouse. They're on the floor. We also have seen them on bench tops. We've seen them sea of green where they're all touching one another, but they're very different production types, but they'll come in here and take cuttings off of these moms about every second or third week, depending on how much nutrition they're pushing to them. Basically, they're just cutting their hair and sticking them into here, and they can get thousands and thousands of clones from individual plant over the course of a season. This is a little bit different production system for moms where they have trimmed up the bottom limbs so it looks more like a tree. This is mainly for airflow, so trying to keep some air moving in this. These are touching from side to side, and they actually have ventilation that they're pulling, not just the fans, but they have big tubes on the other end that they're setting at the base underneath these things to blow air through that canopy to keep it cool and dry so that they don't get fungal diseases spreading through their greenhouse. These moms are about at the end of their life for this particular grower. This was at Broadway Hemp Company in Sanford, North Carolina. They're starting to show their age with a little bit of yellowing in their pot size. It's kind of hard to keep them. You either pot up, or you have them for a year or so and then you make new moms. So that's basically where they are. A little closer image where you can see them starting to show their nutrient deficiencies just too small of a pot at this point. And these were actually discarded, I don't know, maybe a week after we visited the greenhouse here, and they started a new set of moms. So in year one, I'm just looking at transplant-wise. In year one for us, we got only a few transplants were even made it into our states in 2017. Once we got good plant material in the state, you know, growers figured it out very quickly and were putting lots of varieties on the landscape for us. But we got pretty crappy transplants. This is what they looked like when they got to us in 2017. We got exactly 100 of them, and they looked like you know what. Awful. It was the middle of June, and by the middle of June, everyone else in the United States who is allowed to plant industrial hemp had already planted their industrial hemp. So what was left on the marketplace? Crapola. Everything looked terrible. So they said, hey, yeah, we'll sell you $10 plants, you know, and ship them across the country, no problem. And they did, and lots of growers got their material, and they're like, what is this? Luckily, once you get them into the ground, and as any of you who have them in the ground have found, they recover fairly well if you've got some nutrition there, if you keep them moist. This is the same plant 2 weeks after transplant, 6 weeks after transplant. They recover very nicely as long as you take care of them. It's a pretty sturdy plant. It is not a magical plant, okay? It may have magical benefits down the line from where it sits on the farm, but as far as farming it, it is not magical. It is a green plant, and it requires nutrition, and it requires sunshine, and it requires pest control, right? I know of the first ones of these I gave in my state, people were like, oh, you don't have to do anything to it, you just put it out there and it grows. It is a plant, okay? So it needs a lot of attention. So we grow in 2 different systems in North Carolina, and I think Kentucky is very similar. They're growing in a couple of systems for oil production. We have plasticulture, which is more like a vegetable production system, and then we have open bed grows, which are sometimes still a flat bed like you would do in vegetable production, but many times for us it's like tobacco, and you guys don't grow tobacco here, I don't think. So that's a very, it's a cone-shaped bed, so it's triangular and water runs off of it into a furrow, and it would stand, you know, if you're standing in a tobacco field, the top of that bed is going to be about my knee. So it's a very high bed, and they'll put their drip right down in the middle of that bed, just like a vegetable bed. I think it's successful, so far has been successful on both types, and it really is about grower equipment and grower preference as to how you're going to put it out there on your landscape. How are folks doing it here?
Drip and flood.
Any way you can imagine.
Drip and flood, any way you can imagine. Anything else? With furrow irrigation as well? Okay. So, I mean, I think you can be successful in any way you put it out there as long as you're treating it right and you're going out there and spending time with it. But the one thing I will say is, which probably is unlikely to ever be a problem for you all out here, is this plant does not like wet feet. So if you're in a plastic system or a system where you're irrigating very frequently, keep that in mind, because it does not like to get wet and stay wet. So you want to irrigate and then let it go down, and then irrigate and then let it go down. And we have the most trouble with our plastic beds for guys who get it too wet, and then once you get that wet under that plastic, it's very hard to get it dry again. So they end up with more terrible root diseases and things that we don't want to see. Yes, sir?
Do you have a recommended spacing distance from plant to plant?
So the question was, do I have a recommended spacing distance from plant to plant? I'm going to talk a little bit about that. It's going to be very different for you all here. I had a few conversations yesterday, and hopefully I'll have some more conversations today. Where I am, I like a wide spacing, but the plants where I am are getting enormous, and you're going to see that in some of these images. It sounds like here that your plant size, even planted on time, is going to be very small, mostly because of the arid environment. So, I mean, you're saying, what, 18 to 24 inches around, and that tall, or not even? Bigger than that.
I see some of them 18, 24 max right now.
Okay, 8 right now, and then maybe 3 by 3? You're on 4 foot, okay. So I think that depending on your planting date, and your variety. That's going to make a difference. But it sounds to me like a little bit tighter spacing is going to be more appropriate out here, particularly as you move later in the season. For us, I start on a 5 by 5, so 5 foot between row, 5 foot within row. And the later I get in the season, the tighter I bring them in. So every couple of weeks, I would move that a foot inward. That increases your cost because you have to buy more plants or produce more plants. But you'll be spending less time in weed control if you're able to get them where they can close row. Okay? So we have this year we have the plasticulture versus an open bed system. Both are irrigated, and we have it at 4 locations. So no data on that yet, but you can look towards the website, which I'll show in a little bit. As we get towards November, December of this year, I expect a lot of this data that I'm going to be talking about trial-wise will start to come out. It's not going to be 100% relevant to you all, but it will be some very good comprehensive CBD oil production data sets coming out for agronomy. So you can at least use it for some guidance anyway. Okay? This is what it looks like this is a 5 by 5 spacing in year 1. These plants only got about 4 feet tall and maybe 3 feet across, so you can see there's a wide spacing in between them. And they did not close row across. This year I have plasticulture, and I didn't put the pictures up here because it would just look like a big green blob. I cannot walk down the row middle of a 5 by 5 spacing planted the last week of May. You can't go down it. It's closed in both directions. So these plants are this tall and that big, that wide. They are intermingling with one another, and whenever I get ready to cut them, I suspect that many of them are going to weigh 40 pounds fresh weight. So very large plants. Some of the long flowering varieties that flower very, very late have the capacity to get very large. This is what it looks like in open tobacco beds. This is a late May planting. You're looking at it about mid-July, so this is about mid-season. In about 4 more weeks, you'll get almost closed row on this. This particular gentleman did not quite make it to closed row by the time he harvested, but this is your mid-season look at those plants. And what we have here is mostly bay ox in this field.
How's it irrigated?
This is irrigated with overhead irrigation.
Sorry, I missed that.
Siri doesn't know. She's like, I didn't catch the question. So a lot of our tobacco growers have overhead gun irrigation. Some of them have in-furrow irrigation. He does not. And then I have a number of growers who added drip tape to their system this year, and they put that drip right in the middle of the bed, about 8 inches down. So that's where we are on that.
And so far, what works best? Drip, furrow, sprinklers?
So the question, and this is one of the things that I warned Bindu about whenever she asked me to come. I said, it's Arizona. Everybody's going to want to know about irrigation. So I'll just say, I know, have any of you been to North Carolina in the last 2 years? Does anybody know what's happened there in the last 2 years? It rained a lot. In year 1, we had just recovered from Hurricane Matthew in 2016. So our 2017 crop was, lots of water tables were high, didn't really need a lot of irrigation. 2018, we had double the average annual rainfall for North Carolina, which is already a lot of annual rainfall. So I cannot answer any questions for you about irrigation, unfortunately, and I think that some of your colleagues here are going to be helping with that. So when we're dry, anything is working well for us, but we don't have a lot of really wide dry spells, so that'll be very different for you. And then I will also say that if you're using any kind of overhead irrigation, once you hit flower, you probably need to cease that unless it's your only option to avoid fungal diseases in your bud. Yeah. Okay. Very challenging. I can't tell if you guys can even see this. Can you guys see this any better than me? No? Okay. if anybody who's interested in some of these pictures that are not showing up in the bright light up here, this is our open bed versus closed bed, all drip irrigation. Plant size-wise, they look exactly the same, no difference in yield in year 1. I don't expect differences in yield in year 2 as far as different varieties on the different types. And I like that because what it means for our growers is that they can continue working in whichever system they're more comfortable with and whichever system they have the equipment for. Yes, sir?
When you're calculating yield, just calculate the flower weight or the leaf weight?
We do it both. We do it both ways, but the data I'll present here today will be total biomass. But we did separate leaf versus bud. It's a little better, yeah. And we will be separating leaf material versus leaf and stem versus bud material this upcoming year as well. So yield, as far as high quality yield, your bud weight is your most important piece, okay? But no differences in total biomass, and when you have no differences in total biomass, you really don't have any differences in floral weight either. Where we will see differences, I haven't harvested it yet, but I can visually see big differences in my open bed, zero irrigation, which I think is a situation you guys would never be in, so don't worry about that. So here's an overhead shot of that. This is the test you were just looking at from the side. So visually, maybe you can see a little bit of difference in some of these as far as plant size goes, but bud weight was not different for them. It was our nutrient testing in 2018, and this was our variety testing in 2018. So this is a little spot where we were able to get 12 varieties in. You can see some empty spaces where we had mortality on those. And then in year 2, this is what happened to our variety test. This whole entire section is the variety test. There are 29 varieties out there, and all but 4 of them were sourced inside our state lines. So that's how much different varietal material, I say very loosely, was brought into our state. But that means that those things are all available for our growers to purchase and to plant. And you can see this is about mid-season, so these were planted the last week of May, and this would be a late June image. So you can see big differences here in size of plants, and you see there are 5 plants per plot, so you can go in there and see ones that look more like dwarf types, where there are several very small ones in there. And those are the things we want to be able to show our growers. Hopefully you'll have researchers working towards that now that the university is able to stand behind those things, so that you can see what varieties are going to be big, full season varieties that'll touch on a 5-row spacing versus those that might be more appropriate for a 2 or 3 foot row spacing, because that definitely will make a difference. Okay, so nitrogen for floral production. I alluded to this earlier when I was talking about the seeded material, and that we really didn't see any differences in our seeded and fiber nutrient requirements and what is happening for floral production. In North Carolina, we're recommending 100 pounds of nitrogen per acre, regardless of the target end product. I do have a few producers who are eking above that to about 120 pounds, but with no data really to back them up to say that it's better or worse. It's just how they end up for the season. I am applying half of that at planting time. The next question that I always get asked is, what source are you using? We've used many sources at many locations, and source really doesn't seem to matter too much as long as you're not using any kind of animal manures. The animal manures work, but they take longer to release, so that one would make a difference for you. But whether it's a dry, a liquid, whatever, especially if you're using irrigation, your source should not make a difference. Again, I'm putting half of mine up front, and then at many locations, I'm putting the other half about 4 weeks after transplant, so I'm only putting one other shot on there. There are locations where I have split that in half, 25 pounds about 4 weeks out, and 25 more pounds about 8 weeks out. It really just depends on what kind of equipment access you have and how you're able to apply it. So make the decision that works best for you. Just get 100 units out there. In places where I have seen folks who have not gotten the 100 pounds out, they are definitely suffering from particularly nitrogen deficiencies in the late part of the season. They'll start to pull nitrogen out of those older leaves much faster, and then they don't have enough nitrogen to finish out flower. So that's important to think about. And then, oh, that's black. That's not what we want. Okay. So then looking at the first look that we did, we used Cherry Mom cultivar G. Cherry Mom has cultivars all the way from A through like, I don't know, K or something. But this one was cultivar G in response to 6 nitrogen rate starting at 50. You can see we went past the 200 mark. We stopped at the 200 mark on the grain varieties. But because I had a lot of growers who said, we're gonna treat this like corn in North Carolina, and they were like, we're gonna put 300 pounds of nitrogen out there. I was like, I don't think that's a good idea, but go for it. So we did, and it did not pay. So again, once we went up from 50 up to 100, we got a significant yield increase there. This is dry matter in pounds per acre, again, in a short season. I would expect us to be somewhere around that 1,600 to 1,700 pound mark for flower material, and what you're getting here is a full biomass material. But again, planted late June in a very short season on this particular test. And then as you move across there, no difference. I could add 150, I could add 300, and I got no additional yield out of that. So if I'm a grower, am I gonna add that extra 50, 100, 200 pounds of nitrogen? Probably not. And lucky for us, the global literature for grain and fiber sits right around 86. So that ranges from 85 to 95 pounds per acre on the nitrogen use requirement, and 86 is the average pounds of nitrogen per acre. So you need to at least hit that 86 mark, and we don't have anything tested between the 50 and the 100 to say that it's right there, but that's where I suspect it is, with the global literature showing that for grain and fiber. No literature out there peer-reviewed yet for floral production that I know of. We also had, and I did not put letters on this because it would be even scarier if I put letters on it, but suffice it to say that really not a lot of differences, just like you're seeing here. But I did want to call out some work we did where we had additions of potassium and additions of sulfur. So this is, in the 2018 work, this is a seeded variety, not a floral variety. Again, once you hit that 100 mark, everybody's kind of the same, but when you add 30 units of sulfur, that's pounds, and 50 pounds of potassium, you got a little bump there with the 100 pounds. And then we got an interesting spike, and this happened at 2 locations. This one is in Waynesville, but we also repeated this in Salisbury on a different soil type. The addition of potassium with 200 pounds of nitrogen did give us a nice spike. But again, not economical because you're adding a whole 100 more pounds of nitrogen to get that spike that's happening. So we've got another group of researchers in the 2019 season who are repeating and looking more intensively at this nitrogen plus potassium interaction, at least for our soils. And they have it out at 4 locations to kind of see what's going on there. Yes, ma'am?
What was your pre-plant potassium levels before you added potassium?
The question is pre-plant potassium levels. I couldn't tell them to you off the top of my head, but I'm showing you Waynesville because it is a potassium deficient soil. The Salisbury location was a little bit lower level here and did not have a potassium deficiency in the soil. So no recommendation from the soil test lab on potassium addition for the other site. And they have it out this year, and so you'll be interested to see their work when it comes out on a pure sand, which has nothing. And so that'll be interesting to see how it goes. But on a potassium deficient soil, I think the addition of potassium, particularly at flowering, near flowering time, is gonna be helpful.
What's the CEC of your soils out of North Carolina?
Wide range. At this test, I couldn't tell you. I'm not a soil scientist, so I couldn't tell you at this site. Yeah, I would have to look it up. Yes?
So you would say the potassium near flower and then the sulfur about when?
The sulfur we've been putting out at our side dress, so at that 4-week mark. And the sulfur for us really hasn't, even though together where you have the sulfur and the potassium together, you got that little spike. This is 1 year, 1 location on that particular spike. For us, the 2 years of sulfur data put together, sulfur really gives you no response. So unless you're on a sulfur deficient soil, I wouldn't worry too much with it. We looked at sulfur because oilseed crops tend to need more sulfur, particularly those that are making high oil content in the seed. So that's why we thought it would make a difference. So far has not for us. I thought I seen one other hand over there, but maybe it was someone taking a picture. But again, so we started here, we started really with nitrogen, and now I have kicked the can over to the North Carolina Department of Agriculture, where we have some really great soil scientists. I am actually trained as a weed scientist, so pesticides are more my love and interest. So I've given that over to them now that we have a lot of faculty who are interested in working in it. So in the first couple of years, we were just kind of putting out a little bit of everything, and then hoping to get some traction with some folks who really know these parts of the science. This is an overview of our nitrogen, or an overhead view of our nitrogen rate study. It starts about right here. These front plants are not part of the test, and goes back. In Johnston County, this is more of a pure sand location, not a lot of other nutrients available at the beginning of the season, so we tried to put our nitrogen tests out in locations where we get a lot of leaching. And you can see those that have the higher nitrogen, you know, those 5 plant sections that look really nice compared to the ones that are already starting to show yellowing, just to kind of give you a sense for what that looked like. And then an overview, you already seen the plastic bed, that long one that I pointed out to you that was very, very long, that has the 29 varieties. We have that out at 2 locations on plastic and 2 locations on open tobacco beds. This is one of our open tobacco beds, and it won't fit on this page, or it would stretch all the way across the wall here, so we've split it in half and put it there for you. This front section was planted about 4 weeks ahead of this back section, so the break is about right here, and this set was planted on a different planting date, mainly because our feminized seed materials were not available at the same time as our clonal materials were available for planting in our state. So we do have that test blocked by planting date. And then to take a look at last year's variety test information, again, only 9 varieties reported here. We had 12 that were in the test at some locations, but in common across all locations, we only had 9. So we've presented them together here from the 2 locations where we had all 9 represented. Dry weight by plant ranged anywhere from less than a pound all the way up to 4 pounds. And you can see our THC levels here. Most everything, well, everything for North Carolina tested under. These 2 would have tested hot for you. So cherry by cherry and cherry wine would have been destroyed in your state. And the reason I have them starred here is because on average, they would not have been destroyed in my test because they averaged out to less than 0.4. But there were individual plots that were over 0.4, and so those would have been destroyed had they been destroying research in North Carolina. Lucky for us, they have not been destroying our research. Even if we go hot, they just tell us to deal with it because none of our materials making it to the marketplace anyway. I will say, so this is dry weight per plant, not the separated biomass, and usually about a quarter of the weight that you see there is going to be what you end up with in flour, unless you're dealing with a dwarf variety. Those dwarf varieties are much lower in the flour weight to total biomass. But for example, Endurance, which was 4, you would expect about 1 pound of flour out of that 4 pounds of dry biomass. And that is about where I want to see our growers. It might be a little bit different here because you might end up on higher populations. But I really want to see 3/4 of a pound to 1 pound of flour per plant on that 5 by 5 spacing. And that will change a little bit as you go to different spacings. So I'm not sure what the targets are going to be for your space here. This is that variety, Endurance. I've just kind of pulled it out. This particular one, Endurance, Stout, and Bayox. There's one other one, T1. Those tend to make very small colas, very small buds all over the plant. They're not these lovely prize hand-sized colas and buds that you're seeing pictures of on the internet. So they make lots of little tiny ones, but it's rewarding because there are a lot of them and they're all over the plant. And the only issue is that it takes the longest amount of time to get to there. So it kind of depends on what you're looking for in plant structure and plant type as to what variety you choose to grow. Some of those other varieties, you know, this person's whole entire hand would be covered by that bud, but they're only going to make, you know, 25 nice colas on a whole plant instead of hundreds. Okay? And then this is what our bucked leaf material looks like with the bud separated out of it. So this would be a box of bud, maybe a little bit of stem in there, and then leaf material. So this is what the grower is looking to sell. And if he has a nicer bud type variety, then they'll be much larger than that. Take this with a big, huge grain of salt. This is information that was collected from many growers in our state, and it will definitely vary depending on what your production system is. I will say your clone price or transplant price is likely to be going down from that $6 each. That was in our second year. We're now down to about $4 each, so you can decrease that price. This number down at the bottom is based on a 5x5 spacing, so that's about 1,550 plants. If you're on a tighter spacing, you've got to increase that price quite a bit. And then the other place where I have no idea what land rent is out here or if anybody has to pay that, and the testing fees, okay? I think the testing fees in this budget are a little bit low compared to what needs doing. This was early in the system when we were, you know, just doing a compliance test and maybe testing 2 or 3 times to determine where harvest is. We're at a point now where most of our contractors and processors in the state are requiring a lot of testing, and that is many times on the farmer to have to pay for that. And I mean all the way from soil testing prior to planting, or they will not accept your product at the end of the season, all the way through to pesticide residue testing, and mold and mildew and bacterial counts at the end of the season before accepting your material. So that price, that $900 price, is probably the minimum that you would see on testing fees. What is the cost of a basic compliance test here?
It varies. So I think it's $55 or $75 for a THC CBD 10 panel that does not include heavy metals,
right,
here, or microbiology or pesticides.
So it sounds very similar. Our state price is $62 right now. Sounds like you guys are somewhere in that same spot, and it's only compliance testing. It's the THC and CBD panel, and that's it. If you want things like pesticide residues, heavy metals, you're looking at $200 a pop for some of that. If you're selling to a premium product producer and they want a terpene profile, there's another $100 to $200. So for example, my growers are taking that compliance level test, even though they only have one that has to be paid for by the state or has to be paid for through the state. My growers are taking that every single week to determine timing once they hit flower or mid-flower. So they might have 6 or 7 of those that they're paying for each variety by the time the season is out, so that they can harvest at the most appropriate time. Yes, ma'am?
How many acres would that 1,500 clones cover?
1. The question was, what is the acreage that this is covering? This is 1 acre. This is on a per acre basis. So you can plug these numbers in for your 1 acre. Again, if you're not on plastic and drip tape, you can delete that out of there. There aren't really any registered pesticides, but there are many folks who are using different pesticides, so we included a price there. But these are kind of the things you'd be looking at. Your irrigation, you're gonna go down on some of these things, but your irrigation operation is probably gonna go up. You may not need any gas for curing because of your arid and dry environment, but that irrigation price is gonna be significantly more. Yes, sir? Yes, sir?
All right, I have a question. I see you have a cost per line. I know when we planted some of ours that we had a consultant who was trying to tell us that we needed to stay within a certain pH range for water and soil pH.
Mm-hmm.
Does that really make a big difference, the pH levels?
So the question is about pH. Unless you're way out of whack, like really acidic or really basic, you're probably okay. We are trying to stick to around that 5.5 to 6.5 mark. But if you want some more comprehensive information on that, I think you can find the link to the article on our website, which I'll be showing up here in a few minutes. But there is a nutrient series in Cannabis Business Times Cannabis Business Times. There's a nutrient series. I think it was a 6-part series that came out of a group at NC State that's doing work in the greenhouse, but it includes work on pH, water pH, soil media pH, and then all of the nutrients. So check that stuff out for more. So taking that example a little bit further, so again, I'm looking, this is on a per acre basis for us in North Carolina on a 5 by 5 foot spacing. 1,550 clones is what I'm talking about here. And I'm showing you a floral material for that acre at 3/4 of a pound to 1 pound of flower per plant. So this would be the 3/4 mark, and this would be the 1 pound mark of how much flower you would make if you're doing it right in our part of the country. That's what I want to see growers making. At 3% CBD, which is very, very low, okay, that's going to give them a price in our state at $10.50 per pound. Are they making money? Not really, okay? Not making money, barely breaking even. At 10% CBD would bring $35 a pound. So our kind of average contracts are paying $3.50 per pound per point. That is, I would say, varies widely across the U.S., so you'll have to adjust that for whatever your processors are paying. And at that price, we are certainly making a good return on our investment. Many of them had floors of 10% in the first year, meaning if a grower brought them floral material that was under 10% CBD, they could refuse it. Most of them did not, because almost no one brought them 10% CBD material in the first year. And this year, most of those floors are at the 8% mark. So growers are expected to make 8% CBD, and they're still paying that $3.50 per pound per point for clean material. In 2018, most of the varieties fell between 2.5% and 9%. And I will say it was about a third, and a third. About a third were at the top, third in the middle, and a third at the bottom. And the ones at the bottom were those long flowering varieties. And the reason is that we had to harvest them ahead of Hurricane Florence. So remember I said, if you've been to North Carolina in the last couple of years, it rained. That was Hurricane Florence, and I don't even remember the name of the next one that came because there were so many that year. But we had 2 major hurricanes, and many growers had to harvest ahead of that hurricane up to 4 weeks early. In a 5-week flower cycle, who wants to harvest 4 weeks early? So we were just barely on the edge of starting to build our CBD value in some of those varieties. And as long as we can cross our fingers and not hit any more than Dorian, we may be able to see what those potentials are for those varieties this year. Yes, sir?
Do you harvest on a certain trichome, clearness, or cloudiness?
The question is, do you harvest on a certain trichome, clearness, or cloudiness? So we actually want to wait until our trichomes turn to an amber color. So they'll be clear to start with, then they'll turn white, and then they'll be like really opaque. But most of the time, by the time we're ready for harvest, they're kind of tan colored. And that's what we're looking for under the hand lens for harvest, if you're timing it that way. But I'm generally timing by testing, though they match up fairly nicely. You just want to be careful once they start to turn tan that you don't push some of those varieties. You know, your CBD and your THC will track each other. So as you increase CBD, you're also increasing THC. They're a very similar biosynthetic pathway, and they're going to be in a particular ratio by variety. Okay, if you have a variety that has any kind of marijuana background, and many of them do, even though you don't know they do, we've lost. Someone check on that. I'm going to give him a minute so that you guys can still hear me.
Less than 20.
Less than 20, okay, we're good.
Maybe the microphone.
Check it out.
Battery.
Oh, yeah, okay, maybe it's me. Okay, so they track one another, and you want to be very careful that you're not, there is a kind of a formula to those ratios, and they're not 100% worked out, but there's a really good breeder up at Cornell, Dr. Larry Smart, who's working on where we can push those ratios to. I would say don't anticipate that you're going to see any of those really wonderful 18, 19, 20, 25% CBD varieties. They're out there, but they're hot. I promise they are. If you're going to be in that 0.3% range, I would not expect you a maximum to see anything more than 14 or 15%, and even that would be pushing it, because that ratio follows one another for CBD THC. Now, when you go to Colorado, when you go into other places where recreational is legal, then they let the industrial go a little bit further. And that's why you see varieties coming out of those states that are claiming 18, 19, 20% CBD. I would say don't expect that, okay? Okay, so the rest of the stuff I have is just kind of some overview pieces. I'm going to kind of skim through it fairly quickly because it's not a bunch of researchy things. It's just kind of giving you a sense for what other things we're testing in North Carolina, what other things you could be seeing on our website by the end of the year because we're just starting to harvest. So we do have some population work. This is an overview of that in July. So this is the spacing that most of my growers are on, either a 4 or a 5 foot spacing right now. But we do have some 2 foot and 3 foot spacings, and that's in the row. These are all on a 4 foot with a cross row spacing, mainly because of equipment. Okay, our growers are either a 48 inch or a 36 inch bedder, and so they have limitations on what their within row spacing can be, or between row spacing can be. But definitely you'll see, these were mid-July, they're completely closed row at this point. Even the 5 foot ones planted in May are closed row, but planting date will be an important component to that. We also did some planting depth work. Anyone who has purchased clones to plant, or if you have that experience next year, you're going to find that your transplants will vary widely in how large they are and how uniform they are. And so we had growers who had things that were 6 inches tall all the way to things that were 14 or 15 inches tall. And many of them were experienced as tobacco growers and tomato growers and pepper growers, and they transplant those crops as well. But those crops also all will form some adventitious roots under the ground. So they're used to burying them 8 or 10 inches and expecting lots of root production to happen. And one of the things we wanted to caution growers about is cannabis does not do this. If you find your cannabis plant is making roots under the ground above that root ball, then you have a root disease issue going on, because the only way that it does that is under a severe stress. And every other case, we will find those roots. If you bury it deep, the root ball is down here and it will make roots under that, but not above. So we wanted to see if we were going to get any mortality if we buried them deeply, because we knew many of our growers were going to be doing that. There is some mortality out here. Lost it again. All right. There is some mortality out here. But it does not vary based on my planting depth. We planted them as deep as all the way up to the top node, and as shallow as right at the root ball right at the surface. And essentially, there's no difference right now in what these look like from the air, and I don't expect a difference in their yields overall. So it'll be interesting to see that, but it's going to be good for our growers and good for other folks to know we can kind of plant them as deep as we want, and it doesn't really make a huge difference in survival.
Is that non-glass filter?
No, this is open bed. It's an actual picture of the test there. No go, yes go? Because that person back there is probably going to find I'm yelling in their ear with this thing right here. Okay. We've also done some mulching by spacing work, so looking at 4, 5, and 6 foot spacings on a black mulch versus a white mulch. Certainly out here you wouldn't be doing anything as severe as a black mulch, but we do have different colored mulches out there. No real differences in yield until you get into a tight spacing. Once you get down to 4 foot, the black mulch starts to decrease the yield, mainly because of soil temperature. And I think if we got that spacing even tighter, 2 foot, 3 foot on that black mulch, we'll start to see decline on those plants. But this was all that was tested in that first year. This year, and this is Dr. Janine Davis's work out of Western North Carolina. She's repeating this with multiple mulches, not just the black and the white, and many more spacings and planting dates this year. So look for that to come out as well. We also have a set of living and dead mulch tests, also something that you probably will not be experimenting with out here. We have a number of sustainable kind of small farm folks who want to do things with cover crops and living and dead mulches, and so we serve them by having a few tests out for them to look at. So this has 5 different cover crops as well as 3 dead mulches, cereal rye, miscanthus, and pine straw, and I'll just give you a sense for what that looks like. Here's the miscanthus mulch, so those plants look nice and healthy. Then you get into one of the cover crops and you see the plants are much smaller because this is competition. The dead mulches I think look much better than the live mulches at this point, but we shall see. We have this out at 2 locations. We do have, just to highlight a couple of our other researchers. So I have the herbicide trials with IR4, so this is food use exemption testing for fiber and seeded types. This will be the first year, 2020 will be the first year that IR4 is going to approve anything for CBD oil testing. The previous 2 years have all been for seed and fiber work. But we do have 2 years of data on herbicide work for things that can go forward with EPA. And 1 year of fungicide testing. That was fungicide, foliar fungicides and seed treatments. Dr. Lindsay Thiessen is the pathologist there, and Dr. Hannah Burak has just joined the team as the entomologist, and she is going to be doing some insecticide work this upcoming year. And then you can see this is one of our herbicide plots. So this is the non-treated. You can see very, very weedy, and we definitely have some products that are working well for us. And were approved by the company to be included in the testing, which is the important part of getting things registered. We've already talked about pesticide testing, but for example, most of our processors are going to require pesticide residue testing for all of your CBD material. It's not as common in seed and fiber because of those materials are going for a different market class. And when you harvest that seed, you're removing a lot of the material that would have come in contact with the pesticide anyway. And then after that, I just have a few kind of common problem things that my growers ask most often. What is the difference between male and female flowers, especially as you move into direct seeding? You'll see a lot more males in those feminized varieties. So it's very easy to tell, but so this is a full male and this is a full female. The harder part is when you have a hermaphrodite. So you need to be looking very closely at your full females, and most of the time if you have a hermaphrodite or one male pollen sac forming in this flower, it's going to be at the base of that female flower. So you want to look at the base of all your colas and look for these little pollen sacs to be forming. If you have feminized seed transplants, okay, so things that are not necessarily 100% female, and you find hermaphrodites, get rid of them. Don't cut the branch off. Don't cut 10 branches off. Get them out, because it has the capacity to continue to throw males on that plant for the whole season, and you're going to decrease your CBD levels with that pollen being present, okay? So full male, yes, get it out. But if you see hermaphrodites out there, get them out too. Whole plant, not just the branch that it's on. And I know it's really hard at that. It's really.
Somebody has been trying to connect to the Bluetooth.
Stop trying to connect to my microphone. So get those hermaphrodites out of there. It's hard whenever you see those flowers starting to form and you see dollar signs out there, but you want to save the greatest majority of your crop. So make sure you get them out. We just had a field day recently, and this was the setup for the insect and disease folks. So for us, lots of crown and root rots, Pythium, Fusarium. We're going to talk about that, I think, a little bit later. So I didn't put a lot of those guys in here, except for just to show you what some of our pitiful root systems sometimes look like. Root binding is a common mechanical, try this one, a common kind of mechanical or physical problem that we had. Very bad in 2018, not quite as bad in 2019. How much time? 10 minutes, okay. Did you have a question at the back? No? Okay. So we put out some testing this year. This will be some fairly comprehensive testing looking at root binding. So this is Bayox, one of our most common varieties in North Carolina. This is a 30-day clone, this is a 45-day clone, and this is a 60-day clone. Hemp is like those fun shrubs that you buy at Lowe's Hardware or Walmart or any other big box store that you might buy plants at, where when you take it out of the pot and it's wrapped all around there and you're going to go put it out in your garden, you have to break those roots up. So if you get to a point where hemp has started to wrap, it is not going to stop doing that. It will continue to do that no matter how large it gets until it binds itself. Okay, and that's really uncommon, unusual for other crop plants that we deal with. So that's something important to keep in mind. So we put out a root binding study. These are the 30-day clones. So 30 days from sticking, and these are the 60-day clones. You can see a big difference in the root masses there. But these are ready, feeder roots, nice and white, ready to go out and find nutrition and build a good root system for us to stand on for the whole season. And these are, you can already see, starting to turn dark. They should be bright white. There's no disease process going on here, but they're just starting to bind themselves. And we want to look at those at the end of the season. So we'll be digging this entire test to see what those root structures look like after the season. So 30, 45, and 60-day clones, we treated them with multiple treatments to try and alleviate the problem. So vertical pruning, horizontal pruning, and hand breaking those plants up. And then all of those treatments with and without a shock reducer to try and see if we can find one of the treatments that will correct the problem in case you happen to end up with clones that are really too old to be going out into the field on your farm. So here's what we really want them to be looking like, and this is what happens late in the season. There is a disease process going on here, but it is because this plant has cut its own cambium layer, it's cut itself and allowed an organism in, and we're seeing a lot of this in North Carolina, particularly 2018, but starting to see it. You don't see it until the plants get large. You can see this stalk is probably 2 inches in diameter. So the plants look beautiful, and we get to the end of the season and you go out there and like 2 days it's wilted. And you're like, oh no, because you got a 6-foot plant and now all of a sudden it's looking terrible. Those are situations where, number one, get the plants out because you may have a root disease issue going on. You don't want it to be sticking around in your soil if you can help it. But also that way you can take a look at these roots. There are roots there, but you can see they've just circled themselves. Just some pictures of what that looked like. This is the vertical cut, the horizontal cut, and then the shock treatments that we put these clones under. Stem splitting, if you end up with those large varieties, you definitely can get stem splitting depending on the shape and structure of those plants. They will continue to grow throughout the season, but you just end up with a bigger mess for harvest. It doesn't work very well if you have a mechanical harvester to try and go through there and get these things. But they will usually continue growing as long as you don't have a disease organism come in to that wound. Chimeras, anybody experienced this year? Yes, so lots of that with the direct seeding or the feminized seed. Not a problem unless you're seeing really, really severe chimera where you're going to have a limited photosynthesis. Nothing wrong with these plants. Leave them in place as long as the rest of them, they'll be fine. And I think that, and so this is just a group from our class visiting the pathology clinic. Again, more pathology later today after lunch. And this is our NC State website where you'll find the results to any of these tests once they are harvested and analyzed at the end of the year. I expect data releases sometime between Thanksgiving and Christmas, so just be patient with us because it's a lot of work that's out there. industrialhemp.ces.ncsu.edu, and in our news and updates, usually you'll find the most recently released material here, including news items from around the country. And then on the sidebar in red, there are spaces where it says things like business resources or fact sheets and things like that where you can find individual data sets. This is my crew and contact information. This is my office phone, rolls to my cell phone. Don't be discouraged. It's often voicemail is full. I'm sure you'll find that with your hemp folks here. It's a very big struggle to keep it empty. And we have a couple of graduate students looking for another good one if you know anyone interested in working in hemp. And we have a Twitter feed. This is my real job Twitter feed, and this is my hemp job Twitter feed. So I'll stop there. I don't think we have a whole lot of time for questions, but I will be here for the panel. Who's letting me know if there's time?
We have like 5 minutes.
A few minutes for questions, okay. And while we're doing that, I'll just scroll through. There's 4 or 5 pictures from our recent field day here, and you guys can just browse at that. Yes, sir?
Some things that I encountered was root binding. So what exactly causes that? It just outgrows the plug before you transplant?
Yeah, so the question is what is causing the root binding? We do have some work looking at cell shape and cell volume to see if that's causing any of the issues. But yeah, it's basically as soon as it's been in there too long, as soon as it starts to curl around, then it is just going to continue growing in that trajectory. It's not like other plants that will make lots of new roots, feeder roots, when you put it in the ground. And I've seen roots like this big around, just like wrapped the whole entire stem, and it just cuts it, at some point.
We got our transplants kind of late from the greenhouse, and that's what we noticed too. When we started pulling males too, that the taproot would just, it was big.
Yeah,
it would just be
but it's wrapped. So so look for results from that test to kind of see if there's anything that will remediate that. But my best recommendation is to work very closely with your supplier about your timing of planting and insist that you have clones that are 4 weeks old or less, especially if you're in a small cell. So most of my growers are in a cell where there are anywhere from 80 plants to 150 plants per tray, so very small cells. And if you stick that with a rooting hormone, in 10 days the roots are going to be at the bottom of that tray. In 28 days it better be in the field or you're going to start to encounter root binding. Yes?
What are you doing for weed control?
The question is, what am I doing for weed control? All kinds of things that you can't do yet. So we talked about the herbicide testing. We're going into 2020 will be the 3rd year of some herbicide testing. This is the reason that most of my growers want to be in that open bed situation that looks more like a tobacco bed, because they can go through and cultivate multiple times. So they still have cultivation equipment that they use quite a bit. I don't know how much that's used here because of dust and erosion and things that go on out here that don't go on for us. I have a lot of grad students that spend a lot of hours hoeing. And we also have and I think it's true here too, there's quite a number of H-2A or seasonal workers that come into the state. And my growers heavily rely on that for not only pest scouting and worm squishing, which is a terrible job, but also for hand weeding 5-6 times throughout the season, but worth it when you're talking about a $25,000 per acre return. But as far as herbicides go, it's going to take time before we have registered products. I would say most of the states, there were some state lists kicked around or talked about earlier. Very few products on those lists are herbicides. Sometimes people are using non-selective products in their row middles before row closure and calling it non-crop area. Still not legal as far as most states go, but I know folks are doing it. With regard to that label stuff that was talked about earlier at the Kentucky Field Day 3 weeks ago, I think, the EPA was there and they made a public announcement that they are evaluating 10 labels that have come through for registration on industrial hemp, and they have promised that they will make a decision on all 10 of those before the close of 2019. They are, I think, currently still in public comment period until September 23rd, so you can go and make public comment. I will say all of those products are very soft materials, but it's the first step to starting to get some materials looked at by EPA so they can get a process going for this crop, and then it should be easier to kind of move materials through there. Other questions? Everybody smells the pizza, yes.
Are you guys doing anything with bed preparation equipment? How are you guys lifting your beds up? Are you prepping the soils before you get into the ground, or a lot of guys just go in until?
So the question is about bed preparation. For most of our open bed, even our vegetable bed, that is full tillage. It's not going in no-till. It's full tillage and bedding, either bedding with plastic or without, but it's full tillage, including cultivation in between those rows throughout the season. Many times we're doing an initial tillage pass, then applying our initial fertility, and then also working that into the ground as we bed. Does that answer your question? I think, yeah. A little bit has been done no-till in North Carolina, and I will say with limited success so far. Because those root systems are just so tight, I mean, they really need room to breathe. So if you have tight soils, sometimes that's tough. Other questions? I think that's the last of my pictures. Let me get a few more here. All right, thanks so much.
Hello, hello. Good afternoon. Hope everyone had a great lunch, and this is turning out to be a very information-heavy speaking talk today. So, if you can't hear what I'm saying, just tell me to get closer to the microphone. But I'm Matt Brecht. In 2016, I left Syngenta with 11 years of experience with them in the turf and ornamental section in Florida. So I left there, I got some investors together, went out to Oregon, and I developed Dutch Valley Farms, which is a tier 1 operation for cannabis. And about 8 months ago, I left that for Marone Bio, and I oversee the cultivated garden line, which is all the greenhouse grown products, as well as cannabis and hemp. So all of my time right now is focused really on cannabis and hemp, as you can probably are aware. So the left two pictures is my grow operation. I'm doing both LEDs and double-ended, and that's me on the right at an indoor facility, which is all rock wool, which is my favorite. So I have a little bit of knowledge when it comes to the actual production of cannabis, and as well as hemp, outdoor hemp as well up in Oregon. Now, what I'm hearing so far around the room with some of these new growers out here is that I'm very concerned. I'm very concerned because there's a lot of things you guys still need to learn about in order to how to get this plant produced or grown and produced with good results. So one of these things is your temperature of your soils and your environment. The other thing is going to be your day length. So once you go past 12 hours or less than 12 hours of light, if you're going outdoor production, we're going to need to really talk about autoflowers. If you don't know what an autoflower is, basically it's not dependent on the actual day length itself. So if you have an autoflower, let's say it's a 62-day autoflower, you put it in the ground, in 62 days, it'll be ready to go. There could be a 72-hour harvest or 72-hour autoflower, and there's some longer ones as well. The genetics right now for autoflowers is really minimal as far as large production goes. So its breeding still has a long way to go, I think. So the top right picture, as you can see, is the day length. And right now, we're looking right here at September, and this is 40 degrees latitude. So you can see you guys are 35-ish, okay? And that presents some interesting problems for you. So I always break out hemp into two things. One is industrial hemp, and the other one is CBD hemp. You heard a little bit about industrial hemp for fiber and seed. That's kind of what it looks like. But what we hear, most of you people in here, what I've heard is we're talking about CBD hemp in here. CBD hemp for the oil. How do we grow it? the past speaker did a great job in talking about overall how to produce in general. On the West Coast, we have a little bit easier climate structure than we do on the East. And in fact, next week I'll be out in South Carolina looking at a hemp variety trial out there. And what I've understood is about 20% of their strains that came from the West Coast survived and did okay on the East Coast. So there's a lot to be doing as far as how to produce these plants throughout the country. So these are some production facilities in the West here. This is Southern Oregon. And personally, when I like to see transplants happen, I want to see them in a little bit larger root zone, maybe a 72 cell. And the plant shouldn't be too leggy. They should have a nice squat structure. This is to provide or to give you the best initial start to your fields. Someone asked me about seeding their fields. I do not recommend seeding your fields at this time for CBD planting. I just would, if I were you, I would stick with transplants. So here is a CBD hemp on pivot. Again, this is open. These are 6-foot centers. This is 3.5-foot spacing. This right here is right about 4-foot spacing. And you can see this is raised beds and plasticulture. You can do non-raised beds and plasticulture, or you can do nothing on the left and just do cultivate it. I don't recommend this side. I recommend more of this side if you're going to do it. Anyone who is doing 10 acres or less, I definitely advise you, especially if you're doing the wintertime, with some of these new autoflowers, I would definitely suggest you do plasticulture. And there's various reasons for why we can talk about later. So this is a field in Northern California. The picture on the right is a month and a half later. So you can see this is a very, very good, this is 250 acres right here of what you just saw. Yes, you can grow it indoors. Here's what to do and what not to do. Obviously, you need some kind of airflow. You definitely want to have some kind of trellis structure like they have here. There's different ways of doing that. If anyone here is growing starts inside your greenhouse, it's a good business to be in right now because the starts, cost a little bit of money. And with seed prices being $1, $1.50 a seed, you need to really understand how to grow these up successfully in order to be a good producer in the future. And then, of course, if you want to do your own seeding, if you want to make your own hemp seed, you can. You get a couple large feminized plants in the middle, and that'll seed out or pollinate the rest of your females there. This is 1 acre under poly, which did about 600 acres or 700 acres, of seed, or even more. Okay, so most of you guys are familiar with indica and sativa. I bring this up because the plant on the right is an autoflower. And where does it come from? It comes from northern Russia, Asia, and it's a very small plant. And that small plant, basically, when we breed into these larger plants, either a sativa dominant or an indica dominant plant, we get what we call an autoflower, which then does not necessarily mean it has to have a 12 to 12 day light cycle. And so this is going to become very important for outdoor production, I think, for CBD oil here in the near future. Okay, diseases, insects, and some other things. I'm going to talk about products in general. Here in Arizona, what I can understand is that you guys are going off of the Colorado list of approved pesticides on cannabis and hemp. This is Fusarium oxysporum. Not a big thing out in the field, but what we see here, this is more about the starts. So if you're growing your own starts in the greenhouse, this is something you're going to have to keep an eye out for. It's a fairly weak fungus, but it is 90% of all of these problems with the root and stem is going to be Fusarium oxysporum. We don't really see as much when it comes to Pythium or Phytophthora. Phytophthora is more about in the field. What you're going to notice is a water-soaked lesion right here, and you can see that this stem here is kind of water-soaked, and it's very soft. It's a classic indication you've got fusarium. Yes, you can have foliar fusarium. It's rare, but if the humidity and environment's correct, you will get some sporulation up here. White mycelium with a little bit of pinkish to it, kind of classic fusarium. This picture right here is a dieback on the end. So when you go to cut it, there's a dieback of fusarium, and this is where some of the spores were coming from to infect the new transplants. This is your number one problem out in the field. You just spent, I don't know if some people, like I said, on average, it's somewhere between 22 and 24 weeks of, from going out into the field to when you're going to harvest. And then the last 2-3 weeks, you have 20% bud rot. I mean, that's thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. This is something you always want to avoid is your biggest issue right here is botrytis cinerea or bud rot. This is bud rot right now in actually South Carolina. And you can see right here that there's all this dark leaves, and inside there is a really dark mass of flowers basically just being annihilated by botrytis. So this whole stalk right here is unusable and just gets thrown out. It was brought up earlier that the plants do not like their feet to be wet, especially the last 3 weeks of flower. What we've seen, and it's kind of it's more anecdotal than anything, is that if you have very wet feet, at the end, before you go to harvest, a lot of times, most of the times, it translates to higher botrytis bud rot. So try to make sure that going into the harvest, you're pulling back on the irrigation needs. Powdery mildew is going to be an issue. How much of an issue here in the desert? I don't know. Sorry, I don't really know exactly how bad it's going to be. We've had mixed in Southern Oregon, in California, it's about 100 miles away. There's about 300 acres out there. They're just now starting to see some powdery mildew as the plants have closed all the lanes. So that's air movement. So there's a humidity issue, there's an air movement issue. That's what usually increases your powdery mildew. Southern hemp blight is going to be, I think, more of a central to east coast kind of thing. Will we see it out here? I'm not really sure. Does anyone have sclerotium ralphs? Yeah. Okay. Yep. So this could be one of the major issues, I would say. So as the plant's getting a little larger, maybe right before flower, this fungus comes in and just annihilates it from the base. Pretty easy to diagnose. You're looking for this white webbing mycelia, and that'll be right here along the base. If you see that, and you see these sclerotia right here, you do not want to get to this stage because they will overwinter for a couple of years, and you'll perpetuate this cycle. Okay, verticillium root rot. So these pictures come out of Southern Oregon and Northern California. If you've planted mint or some other crops that are prone to have verticillium, this will be an issue in your lower areas. So places that stay a little bit wetter or you're giving a little bit more irrigation than some others, we find a lot more incidence of verticillium root rot. What happens is the fungus comes in, annihilates the root system. You can see all the pitting that's happening on the stem. But the most important problem is it gets into the stem, into the xylem, and clogs that water transport system. And you get a plant like this, which just looks like it's totally, it's not getting any water. No, it's getting plenty of water. It's just verticillium's all clogging it. Okay, leaf spot. This was actually pretty surprising this year. I didn't think it would show up this fast. As a plant pathologist, I was pretty interested to see what was going to be showing up around the country, and I've seen a lot of things. And so right now, tentatively, we've got 3 leaf spots, and that's Cercospora, Septoria, and Exorohyalum. Exorohyalum is part of the Helminthosporium family, so Curvularia, Bipolaris, Dreschularia, and Exorohyalum are part of that family. I've been out of plant pathology in university a while, so I'm sure that they've regrouped things and reclassified things. So everything I say here, take it with a grain of salt. Okay, when it comes to insects, you can see, which is very interesting, what do you notice on this picture is the last time we did research on hemp? 1942. I'm telling you, there's a lot to know. There's a lot to learn still. We are just all learning together, okay? Some of us might have a little bit more information, but again, all of us are still learning together all around this country. So European corn borer, some of these other worms that come in, this is starting to show up more so in the northern area, so Great Lakes, Lower Canada, Northeast. We are seeing some of these worms happening in the southeast, especially in South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, and Kentucky right now. For those people who see this bottom, it's Whitney Cranshaw from Colorado State University. He is an entomologist. So Whitney is one of the guys out there in the United States right now who knows a lot about entomology on hemp. So if you've got concerns, sorry?
He's retiring this year.
Oh God, no, really? Of course he is. Just so you know, I've sent entomology pictures to Whitney and 2 other entomologists in other universities, and they all came back with different answers. So you can see that we're still a lot of learning to do. What kind of caterpillars are you going to see? See all these pictures? They're all in cannabis. It could be any of these. What's going to show up in your area? I don't know. Sorry. We're still learning here. Probably everything, yeah. Okay. And we'll talk about what works on them and what you can use on them. I mean, at this point, it's very limited. Grasshoppers. I put that slide on here because I know how much the West gets grasshoppers. Yeah? Yeah, okay. Most of the time, these are chewing leaf insects. And the worst part of it is that they go for the stem, because then you have complete stem dieback. It's not a super critical thing until you get right before flower, then it's an issue. So that's your window. If you have a couple here, there, or there's a bunch on your early starts, mid vegetation, you're probably okay. Hemp russet mite. This is going to be one of the largest, one of the worst problems on hemp, I feel like, in the Midwest to the West. I'm not sure how much it's going to play out in the other areas of the country, but just keep an eye out on this. What you're looking for are these tiny little larval nematode kind of looking things, okay? And they're going to be near the base of the leaf, so near the petiole, where the curls are, or into the pre-flowers or the new growth. And what you're looking for is distorted leaf structure with stunting. You can see this is stunted, and some chlorosis. Next thing you're going to look for, hopefully you don't get, is the cannabis aphid. Now, we grow a lot of hops out in the Pacific Northwest, and we were thinking maybe the hop will go onto the cannabis, and the answer is no. The hop aphid won't go on the cannabis just yet. So far, so good. However, we do have a cannabis aphid. And right now, what the entomologists tell me is that it's only on the cannabis plant or hemp plant. Well, that's kind of weird because we haven't grown this plant very much, so where are all these bugs coming from? There must be an alternate source somewhere. And someone knows, let me know, because I'd like to find out. But the cannabis aphid, typically in the southwest here, I find that this one's going to be an issue, especially when the cooler temperatures. But it's unclear how much aphids you're going to get on your plant. Typically what we see is we see them stack on the lower branches, so they're hidden away from the overall heat in the sun. And there's a lot of products that work fairly well on them, a lot of the soaps and oils and some of the products out there. Okay, so now this may or may not be an issue with outdoor production. We haven't seen it yet. Indoor production, this is the worst thing you can get, is root aphids. So for people who are doing starts in their greenhouses, this is something to keep a lookout. If you get this, it is dial 911, and it's all hands on deck, because you do not want this thing getting out of control. So I'm going to show you these couple pictures. So this is on rock wool. Okay, so I have a couple large cannabis producers who are growing on rock wool indoors who have extremely bad issues with these root aphids. You can see them, they're darker. If the population gets to a large enough amount, they'll actually start producing wings and they'll fly all over the place. On rock wool, it's not so bad because the aphids on these dense rock wool cubes can't actually penetrate the rock wool. However, if you get it onto soil, peat moss perlite, coco coir, or just regular soil, those aphids have the ability, those root aphids have the ability to go through the entire root structure and decimate it and just chew up all those roots. This is why I'm saying this is probably the worst things you're going to encounter indoors. And what happens is you'll start seeing chlorotic, and then the plant will just stunt. It won't do anything. And no matter what you do to eradicate it, it's going to take weeks and weeks and weeks for it to actually grow out and get some kind of flower. So once you get this, and it's at this stage, you're kind of, it's no bueno. Two-spotted spider mites, this is going to be one of the largest issues for hemp production around the United States. And you can see you should never, ever get to this point right here. Now, I will say that earlier slide I said for that guy who had an acre under poly, he was doing seeding, this was his plants. Now, I was able to catch it in time, come in, we did a whole bunch of sprays and environmental conditions and some other things he wasn't doing correctly. And his plants started to recuperate, but gladly, he was doing seed and not for flower. So anytime you have a seeded CBD hemp, you're going to have a reduction in CBD percentage. Okay, so it's what you don't want, seeded. But he was doing it for seed, for outdoors, and he actually had still really good germination and seed production out of this facility, even though you can see how bad those spider mites were. Yes, I have a question here.
What can you do to treat spider mites? Because we do have those down here.
Sure, so we'll be talking about treatment of some of these insects and diseases here in the second half. I only have 30 minutes, so I'm trying to blow through this as quick as possible. Thrips is going to be an interesting thing. It's going to be more of an issue indoors than in outdoors. Okay, what you're looking for though is this little speckling that happens. So this is early speckling. You could have plants going through no problem with this, and you'll have very little reduction in CBD content or your overall economics. It's when it gets to a very large population where you have this going on, we see chlorotics and speckling throughout, especially on the tips, that it'll result into stunting of the flowers as well. Okay, what else are we seeing around the country? Just to keep you aware of. Obviously, there's some other stem rots that we're seeing. Not necessarily sure what they are because some of the clients haven't gone out and actually disease diagnosed, because a dead plant's a dead plant. They kind of just move on. But if you're going to transplant from this, in a greenhouse, this is peat moss perlite, and he transplanted. This is 2 weeks after transplant. You can see it's completely eaten away, all those roots. Anyone have a guess to what ate that? Ants. So this could be an issue. So this is Northern California, mid-California, and mid-Oregon, Southern Oregon. Will it be in Yuma? I don't know. But it's the same sort of climate or soil structure that we have up in those northern areas. Rabbits, mice, obviously they're going to chew on plants. Mice more so, and moles and things like that. We see them more in the plastic culture because they kind of make a little home out of there. It's nice and moist for them to get some water out of. And of course, the last one is going to be whiteflies. Field production of whiteflies, for right now, we don't see this as an issue, and we don't really see much of it as an issue in the greenhouse. But like so many things, we're sort of just waiting and see because we eventually will probably get something. Okay, and then we got all this weird stuff that goes on. And and I know that the speakers could probably attest to this, is that all over the country we're getting very similar things. So the one on the left is basically a variegated variety. Total genetic happen, 1 out of 1,000 seeds. You pop it, you get this. It is nothing. It's not. So for right now, it's not viroid. So don't worry about it. Move on. This plant right here, if you ever see it again, we see this 2 to 3 plants per acre. Again, the idea is that this is also just genetic abnormality, not viroid at this time. Some people do think that oh, this is total hemp russet mites. Yes, it could be. However, this is not that, and we we don't actually see this kind of symptoms with hemp russet mites extreme. Okay, so this again is a genetic abnormality, and we didn't find a viroid here. On the right, this is another genetic abnormality. Basically, it's studying. It almost looks like a dead-end virus. We think that this one might be the virus. We have some production indoors that has a very similar look to this, and we call that dudding virus or something. It's hop latent dudding virus, I think that's what it's called. So, but most of these are 1 to 3 plants per acre. Don't even worry about it. For right now, they're just genetic mutations. You know what kind of bug this is? Hail bug. Okay, so don't have hail. Hail's bad. But I will say this. The cannabis plant is extremely resilient. After 3 weeks, most of these had leafed out again. Now I'm still waiting on the new picture that's supposed to be coming. This happened about 3 weeks ago, so I'm hoping to get some better pictures, but the farmer said he was able to get some reliefing going. And luckily, this happened just before flower. So, what does a hemp program look like for diseases and insects, herbicides, things like that? This is an overall program I put together kind of hastily. Do not take this with a grain of salt. No, none of you are going to be spraying this many times. All this means is general class of diseases and insects and products to think about and when to place them. I'm not going to go into a lot of this, but I wanted to show you that these programs are starting to kind of come together. This is the one I did. I'm working with a couple other pathologists to come up with a better one. And like Bindu and I will probably be talking about this for a while now. But here's how I see hemp production for insects and diseases. You've got vegetation, early bloom, late bloom. You can see that vegetation is all about a couple applications here and there of insects and diseases. We don't have a lot of things typically early on, but there's a certain key things to look for. But once you get past the first 3 weeks, you're kind of home free. From there, you're just kind of just vegetating. Not a lot of comes in a dry, arid environment like Yuma. Most of the money is going to go right to early bloom, a couple applications for some insecticides, maybe a fungicide, but really it's all about bud rot. Bud rot, powdery mildew. That's kind of where, if you're going to spend some money, I always say front load it, and then end of right before harvest is where you're going to spend that money. Okay, mixing products. So these are just general products in general. You're going to treat this like most other plants and crops out there. A lot of you guys can mix products together, fertilizer, totally okay with hemp as well. Just make sure you follow certain rules as far as adding order when you go to mix your pesticides and fertilizer. Okay, so Marone Bio, we've got 3 products. All of our products are available for use on hemp and cannabis here, well, at least for hemp, let's say, on cannabis, on hemp here in Arizona. So both Grand Evo and Venerate are in bioinsecticides, and Regalia is our biofungicide. The way these work is Venerate is a bioinsecticide. It's made by the fermentation process of Burkholderia, and Grand Evo is made from Chromobacterium. So basically what we've done is we've taken the metabolites of these bacteria that are highly insecticidal, we've concentrated them down into a jug, and that's what Grand Evo and Venerate are. there's no living bacteria in these products, which is very good for us, because now you can mix with other products that maybe are a little hotter, that have a tendency to kill bugs, so you can go out and mix application if you want. But the great thing about these bioinsecticides, they're MRL exempt, they're 4-hour reentry intervals, 0-day PHI. They're extremely soft on beneficial organisms, and you can use these all the way up to harvest. Most people don't anyway. Most hemp growers will stop at week 4 or 5, right before, a couple weeks before harvest. Just really quickly on how Grandivo works. When you spray it, this works more of an internal gut disruption. It reduces the egg laying and fecundity of those eggs. And then the actual insect will stop feeding, and they'll actually get some agitation, a little repellency from the plant. A wide insect range. Again, this would be perfect for hemp. Aphids, thrips, mites, whiteflies, all of it. Very low risk to beneficials. So for those guys who have some beneficials in the field already or who want to put out some bennies, these are some great products to put in with that rotation. Venerate is more the outside of the insect, so you're going to get exoskeleton degradation, molting interference, and then as they ingest it, they actually stop feeding as well. Now, wide label range for their key target pests: root aphids, aphids, spider mites, broad mites, russet mites, thrips. So again, another great thing for us, and also worms. What I like to do is, you've got some worm issues, the smaller they are, the better. Put Bacillus thuringiensis or a BT product like Dipel DF. That seems to be like a hemp industry standard right now. How do they work? You can see we actually have data on greenhouse cannabis. They work extremely well against spider mites. So this is Grandivo, this is Venerate, and we've got some really good data on other insects as well. But these are the ones I pulled out specifically for Yuma. Oh, do you want to take a picture of that? You good? Okay. The third product that we have is Regalia. So Regalia CG is a plant extract of the Renutria plant, and it does 3 things. One, it inhibits the pathogen growth, it strengthens the cell walls, and it promotes plant growth. One of the reasons we're actually using this product more so for plant health than diseases sometimes is that early on what we see is your plants won't stall when you go to transplant. A lot of times what happens, you plant, they'll stall for 2 to 3 weeks depending on irrigation, how you've done your soil. And if you put some of these plants in at transplant, we don't see it stalling about half as long. Again, these are MRL exempt, OMRI listed, 4-hour reentry interval, 0-day PHI. Extremely safe on your plants. Again, you can use it all through harvest. But basically, most of this issues is disease control. So Fusarium, Pythium, some other fungal root diseases. But primarily for you guys out here, it's going to be powdery mildew and botrytis bud rot is where we're going to see a lot of it. We do have some ongoing research right now up in Canada. What you're seeing right here is that Regalia does increase the chlorophyll content. So for those science nerds out here, you know that there's 2 chlorophyll A and B. Anybody know what the B is for? Chlorophyll B is more for low light plants, so if it's shady conditions. And if you have high intense light, chlorophyll A is more prevalent. So you can see when you put out Regalia, we saw a green up effect versus the untreated control here. These plants also initially, the data is not out totally, but we're starting to get some more budding sites, and it seems like it flowers a couple days earlier, which is interesting in a plant health aspect. This is the AUDPC, so an area under the disease progress curve. And you can see that Regalia and Millstop are 2 great products for controlling powdery mildew. And we'll talk about that briefly. Actually, I'll do it right now. So for powdery mildew and some other diseases, including hemp russet mite, here in the West, I definitely recommend going out with a micronized sulfur. It's super cheap, it works great, and a little bit of that sulfur is always good for the plant anyway. The hemp plant likes to have a little bit extra sulfur than some other crops out there. You can use sulfur all the way up till you just see flowering, and then you need to stop, because sulfur will impart a taste to the oil that gets processed. And so after that, if you have an issue with powdery mildew, you can combine it with Regalia or Millstop or some other products like that to reduce your powdery mildew. So that's a sort of a biofungicide, bioinsecticide. Here are two others that are very prominent in the cannabis and hemp world right now. Botanicard WP and the PFR 97. So Botanicard is Bavaria bassiana. PFR 97, I can't remember, but I believe it's a beneficial fungus. The other class of these bio things are more of like what we call bio microbes, or microbes that are going to be around the soil system, somehow providing disease resistance and or increasing the uptake of nutrients and water. Just want to put out some that are being used right now fairly well. Stargus is not registered here, but I'm just saying that is a Bacillus amplifications. Cease, Root Shield, I believe that's a Trichoderma species, one of them. There's a Root Shield Plus. It's like a couple different strains. And then there's a TerraGrow, which is by Bioworks, and they've got a little bit of everything in there. So Bacillus species, Trichoderma, humic acids, amino acids, and some sea kelp. And so a lot of these guys will go out earlier on to help inoculate that soil system because they can't use a lot of systemic fungicides. So they're kind of looking at this to help with any kind of root rots or initial diseases in their root systems. There are two products out there that are highly used or talked about in this industry is azadirachtin and neem oil. So most of you guys are familiar with these two. There's a difference between azadirachtin and neem oil, but they're very similar in its initial production. So a lot of guys again are using something like an Azagard or Azamax, and then other products like Trilogy or some other neem oil. Cold pressed or good product neem oils, they seem to work just fine on some of the insects that we have, and some people are getting a little bit of disease control. However, I do recommend if you've got some root issues with some insects that the azadirachtin products work better. And I don't say if you're going to drench something, I typically don't use any kind of oil product. They seem to gum up the hemp and cannabis root system, so I just don't advise it. These are sort of some of the oils we see out there. Again, all these oils are 25B material, so these are exempt from EPA. And so this one is Suff Oil X, this is mineral oil. Ultra Pure Oil, let's come out something else, or Kapow. I mean, we've seen all kinds of different oils out there. Look for if you're going outside or hemp, look for a good quality oil, stylet oil that is an ag grade version, not some Hydrostore, which are going to charge you 10 times the amount. Organic pyrethrin is on the list for you guys. This one I highly recommend to have it in your barn because there's not a lot of really great knockdown insecticides out there, and Pyganic is one of them. Another one would be spinosad. So this is for powdery mildew. Basically, it's sulfur early on, and then once you get into flower, you can do a knockdown with Millstop. Regalia can be applied with both early on and combined if you want with Millstop or sulfur. And the last sort of category I put up here is the parasitic acids of the world. This is one of the few products that we have to knock down pests. So for you guys, you're really focused on powdery mildew, root diseases, and bud rot. So if anything you're going to use for bud rot control near the end, I highly recommend a parasitic acid because you can go out with a product, it'll basically clean up your flower of any of the spores, disinfect it, and hopefully you'll have less bud rot. So hopefully I cranked through that fast enough to make my 20-minute period. I will say this, so my information's up top. Brian Guess, Brian is my associate here from Marone Bio. He has the whole Southwest territory and Yuma. And then if you guys are trying to figure out a credible agronomic consultant for hemp, Scott with Agrarian Supply, this is basically all they do is hemp around the country. They've got thousands of acres in Kentucky, in Tennessee, in California, in Oregon. I go to these guys for a lot of small questions I need to kind of get answered on the fly, and they do a great job. If you're growing more than 10 acres or 50 acres or something, I highly recommend you find some consultants that have good hemp knowledge, have been growing outside for a couple of years, because this area is going to have a little challenging environmental conditions and growing needs. So without that, from this, I'll take any questions. Yes, up front.
Is Grand Evo exempt from tolerance?
So the question is Grand Evo exempt from tolerance? Is MRL exempt? But as far as tolerance goes, what do you mean by that question?
Well, like California, we can't use anything that's not exempt from tolerance.
Yeah. So as far as California goes, we have the Grand Evo, all the CG products, Grand Evo, Venerate, and Regalia CGs have been okayed by California DPR for both cannabis and hemp, as well as now we have a 2EE for aerial applications. Is anyone thinking that the plants are going to be so high that they're going to have to aerial apply a fungicide or an insecticide or something? Because it may happen if you can't get your rig in and the plants are too big. That's what a lot of farmers are doing right now. Any other questions? Very good. I'll pass it off to the next speaker then. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. Hope you guys are all doing okay. Hopefully you guys won't fall asleep the next half hour here after we just had lunch in a nice comfortable room and nice comfortable chairs. And I'm going to go talk about hemp from what we've been seeing coming through the laboratory. We're seeing a lot of different problems that can be easily solved, and so if I can share with you what we're finding, we can be proactive and not reactive, so you're not going to go through these exact same growing pains that a lot of my clients are currently going through. Now, to give you some background about me, so you know that we are a credible certified laboratory with certified staff, I am actually certified CCA. I'm not proclaimed certified. I actually have a license number, and you can look it up. I'm saying this because I know a lot of people who self-proclaim, so I am actually legitimate. I have my undergraduate in environmental science, actually I'm nervous, not used to talking in front of people. My undergraduate is actually in marine science with a minor in biology, environmental science, as well as chemistry, and my master's actually in agronomy. So I have a little bit of knowledge about everything to kind of put together a lot of puzzles together to solve your problems. I've been doing chemistry in the agriculture field for over 15 to 18 years. So it's not like I'm a newbie, just out of school starting this. I've been doing agriculture in Arizona for over 15 years, working for you guys, trying to solve the problems for you guys so that you can succeed in your everyday operations. Our staff, we hire scientists, graduates. We have PhDs, masters, and bachelor students. We have a variety of scope of people from chemistry, biochemistry, microbiology, conservation biology, so that if you have a problem that's very unique to your agro ecosystem, we can put together our team of staff to solve your problems. And so we try to make it like a one-stop shop to help you be successful. So what we want to do is talk about hemp in Arizona, because that's where we're growing. We're not growing in California, we're not growing in Hawaii, we're not growing in Colorado or on the East Coast, we're in Arizona. Our soils are not like everyone else's. We're salty, our fertilizer inputs and manure are salty, and our water is salty, and then we say grow. And so it's very difficult to grow plants, but we do it, and we do it very well. A lot of growers who are coming to me and using my advice, this is the kind of success that we're giving them. Beautiful, happy plants of hemp. These are people who are not listening to our recommendations and consultants who say, I've done this in greenhouses. I've done this in my closet. I know what I'm doing. Growing hemp versus cannabis is not the same. It's like comparing sorghum to corn, to wheat. It is not the same. They might be related somehow, but one has a taproot, one does not. I can throw all the potassium and sodium and nitrogen at cannabis. I can make the boron levels toxic, zinc, copper levels toxic, and that plant will be beautiful. I do the same thing to hemp, and you'll have no yield. It is not the same plant. So there are 4 things that will be key to your success. The first one is get a pre-plant soil test. If you don't use my laboratory, that's fine. Just get one from a laboratory. That is the key. If you don't know what you have before you start, how do you even know if your land can even produce viable hemp? For example, you don't know what requirements you're going to put in for fertilizer. You want to put in nitrogen when actually you have no phosphorus in your ground, no potassium in your ground? No. You need to know what you're starting with. What if you got so much salt, so much sodium, so much potassium in your fields that all the irrigation, all the leaching, all the gypsum, all these polymers, they're not going to let your hemp grow because hemp does not like salt. It does not like sodium. And so you need to test your fields to make sure, first of all, should I purchase this land? Should I rent this land? What do I need to do? What are my input costs? Will I get my return on investment? And so it's very important to get a pre-plant soil test from somewhere. Second, follow the directions on the pre-plant soil. First of all, ask questions. A lot of these reports may be foreign language to you. You're not used to seeing these numbers. You don't know what they mean. It could be a format you're not familiar with. Call the lab, call your consultant, call your agronomist, ask them questions. If they will not take the time to talk to you and answer your questions, find someone else who's willing to dedicate their time to you. You hired them, they work for you. So you need to find someone who can help you and ask them questions, encourage questions. That's how we learn. Don't just take it for granted. If maybe you heard something somewhere else, double check, ask questions. Second one on there, don't be stingy. Don't say, okay, I know I need 100 pounds of nitrogen. I'm okay, my nitrate in my soil is 15 parts per million. I've grown alfalfa, I've done all these other crops, I'll be fine. You will fail. You will fail. If you do not put the fertilizer down, your crop will not grow. I've seen it many, many times. If you've got soil that has a very high input demand, make sure you get the loans if you don't have the capital to buy the inputs to feed this plant. It's just like any other plant out there. If you don't feed it, it will not grow. And that's a big problem we're seeing. And another one is manage the salts. Yuma is a great area because we have sandy loam soils here. Great for drainage, great for sodium management. A lot of you guys probably use Colorado River water. It's not super, super salty like maybe in Buckeye or in Arlington or other areas like that. You've got better water here than other areas of the country, or actually other areas of the state, I should say. But if you don't, we have to manage those salts. And we got great drainage, so we should be okay. But if you don't know what your soil has in it by pre-plant or by a water test, you've got to find out. Another key to success, test the plants during the growing season. Don't just look at the way it's turning yellow and assume, oh, I know what this means, my chart told me so. And yes, you may be right, you may be wrong, we don't know. Plants turn yellow when they're mad. That's how they talk to us. And so we need to find out why it's turning yellow. If you do a leaf and tissue petio sample during the growing season, you can catch these problems before they happen. You can be proactive and not reactive. If you choose to get a tissue sample, you want the 4th leaf from the growing tip. You can kind of see, is there light? Ooh, there's your growing tip. I know it's a tomato plant, but it's very hard to find a cannabis plant or hemp plant that I want to use. Just count 4 leaves down. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the leaf you want to take. There's the petio you use. These leaves are very lobed. You can see it right there. They're thin like lettuce. They're not a thick leaf like a nut tree. They're not a thick leaf like a corn leaf. You have to have 20, 30 leaves for us to give you an idea what's going on. When they dry out, when we process them, or any lab processes them, it's like they're thin as tissue paper. If you bring me a leaf, or any lab a leaf, they're gonna have difficulties telling you what's wrong with your plant. Grab several leaves throughout the field, about 30 of them, mix it together, make one sample, get an idea what your problems are, or make sure the plant's on target so you don't have problems. And so to continue on plant testing, you want to do this often. Start when your crop has at least 4 true leaves. If you are growing a transplant, you're going to want to wait about 3 weeks after you transplant. If you choose to grow from seeds, and I had a lot of my guys grow from seeds, and the ones that added fertilizer and appropriate water, they did great. The ones that did not, they did not do great. They actually had to go back in and add transplants to about 40 to 60% of their land. But if you do seed, wait till you get 4 true leaves, if not about 2-3 weeks after transplant, and that's when you want to start taking tissue samples. Even if you don't use our lab, I have flyers over there with pictures on it that gives you this information, so wherever you use, at least you'll know what to do. The other key to success is use certified seed. A lot of us thought we might have been getting certified seed. We didn't know. It was like, don't ask, don't tell. If I don't know, I'm just getting my seed. I'll worry about the problems later. There were problems. We did over 20 different germ tests of different lots. We had anywhere from 0 to 60% germination. Imagine if you're that guy who bought a lot of seed with 0 germination. And they had us do germination after they planted their fields. And a lot of times it was because they had seed treatments that burned the seed, or their seeds were infected with disease. Verticillium and Fusarium were the 2 main diseases on these seeds. So the problem with that is not only do you have bad seed, but you just inoculated your entire field with disease. What about your next round of crops if you're rotating? You already inoculated, what is it, maybe 1 acre, 200 acres of bad seed, and that is not a good thing. Another thing that we're actually finding out too is indica versus sativa. You heard that by the prior presentation. It's kind of like you got red lettuce and you got green lettuce, and there's different variety names underneath of them. It's the same thing with hemp. You got your indicas and your sativas. We're actually finding out that indicas work better in Arizona for us. If your plants are stressing, they're gonna flower early. If you have sativa plants, chances are, even if you pump the nitrogen back in to get them back into growth and out of flower stage, sativa is done. They're flowering, game's over. But if you use indica varieties, you have about 80% chance of getting them to grow back. You might be able to get 3 or 4 more feet tall on those plants. You'll be able to get more space for flowers. So if you use indicas and you actually get them to de-stress, you still have a chance to survive and make more yield back. Sativa, it's going to be game over. Unless you can turn it into forage, and relative feed values are good on those. That's a different story for another topic. Long story short, indicas we find are doing a lot better in Arizona. Back to certified seed. If you don't know if you've got good seed or not, get a germination test. Yeah, if you sacrifice 100 seeds, $5 a seed, that's expensive. Even if you give the lab just 10 seeds, make sure you've got a decent germination test. That's better than nothing. That's gonna make sure that at least, okay, if I do put these seeds in the ground, 1, are they full of disease? And 2, it'll tell you what your planting rate is. If you know you have 80% germination, you can adjust your planting rate accordingly. You can maybe get transplants accordingly to fill in those gaps. But you don't know if you don't get certified seed or if you don't test it to find out. I'm gonna go over some common problems that we're seeing in the field. The first problem we're having is salts. Arizona is just salty. It's just the way we are. And salts doesn't just mean sodium, it means overall salinity. If we don't fix the salt problems by adding either sulfuric acid or gypsum or some polymers or irrigating with extra water or some sort of salt blocker, we're gonna burn our plants. They're gonna fry. And if it's at the later stage in the plant, you have massive yellow. You can kind of see it on this guy here. You got tip burn. See all the brown on there? That's salt burn. These plants, they're not like animals. It's a really gross analogy, but it works well. They can't use the bathroom like animals do. They take up all this salt, they put it in their leaf to get away from its body as far as it can, and then when it can't handle the salts anymore, it drops the leaf. It's like flushing the toilet. It wants to get away from its body. But if we overpower it with too much sodium, we're gonna fry our crop, we're not gonna get our yields, and that's a lot of money just wasted. Especially if you're in construction, you're a lawyer, you have a trust fund going, and you've never farmed before, it can be very, very devastating. Another problem we're finding is low nitrogen. This is actually a nitrogen and a boron deficiency plant. This client, they were stingy on their nitrogen. And you can tell nitrogen is going to be usually deficient in the older leaves. What happens is the nitrogen is mobile within the plant. It'll suck the nitrogen out of the older leaves, deposit it in the newer leaves to keep the growth going. But to confirm it wasn't disease, we did do a tissue testing. And it turned out to be low nitrogen. This plant grows fast. It's hungry. It needs that nitrogen. So at your pre-plant, you need to make sure the nitrogen in there. You need to treat this plant a cross between a broccoli and a wheat. That's the best analogy if you got to compare, how do I do this? How do I get this done? It's like a wheat in the fact that you have to have the nitrogen and you have to spoon feed the nitrogen a little bit all the time at each irrigation. Yes, put your 50 pounds per acre down at pre-plant, and then just spoon feed a little bit all the time to make sure you've got constant supply of nitrogen. When we irrigate with extra water for flushing, we lose nitrogen. It's really hot out here, we lose nitrogen volatilization. So we have to spoon feed these plants. If the nitrogen drops too low for too long a period of time, it's going to go into mature stage. We all know if we want big plants that grow quickly, we got to put the nitrogen down. And you got to spoon feed it slowly so it keeps a constant supply and that they don't run out of gas. Also, low boron. We found that very, very common in the plants. Hemp likes boron. Boron allows the plant to uptake calcium and magnesium into the plant, helps with heat stress, helps ward off disease. You need a good, strong cell wall. If you don't have the boron, you're gonna have weaker plants that be more susceptible to disease. Not only that, boron is used to make your flowers. We've tested flowers on many different plants. The last 5 years I've been working with cannabis and hemp, and that flower is basically composed of calcium, magnesium, and boron, and then it shoves all the other stuff in the building structure. So you gotta put the boron on. It's very important, especially when you get down to flowering. Another problem we're finding is low iron, and you can kind of see how the tops of all these plants are yellow, and it's actually an iron deficiency in the soil. If your soil is not nutritionally balanced, you're going to have these problems. The goal is to have more iron, then manganese, then zinc, and then copper. If they're not in that order in your soil and you ignore those problems on your soil report, your plants will show me you lied, and it's going to show up this way. The plants will rat you out on every little thing you didn't do to them. They're like your little, sister, brother who's 3 years old, and they tattletale. If you don't follow the pre-plant instructions, the plants will mimic all the problems to the key. If the plants uptake, any plant uptakes nutrients by molecular size and weight. Iron and manganese are about the same size. Zinc and copper are about the same. And so when you have more manganese than iron available in the soil, which is a very, very big problem in Arizona, especially with organic growers, the plants will get confused, actually uptake more iron, be deficient in manganese, and then we get yellow tops. So if your leaf analysis actually shows manganese deficiency, I look at your pre-plant soil, it tells me it's out of balance. I confirm with you that, yeah, I didn't put iron down. We put the iron in, it fixes this problem. So it's very important that we listen to the soil report. It will save you a lot of pain and suffering once you get these plants in the ground. And like I said before, this crop is like a wheat and a broccoli. It's like a wheat because we always have to make sure we have our nitrogen in the plant. If you follow your pre-plant soil and you maintain the nitrogen in, you're usually gonna be okay on your yields. It's like a broccoli. because if the nitrogen falls apart in broccoli, everything else falls apart. You guys all know that. You got to chase that, make sure everything's okay nitrogen-wise in the plant, and you're okay. If your nitrogen drops a little bit, all your micronutrients will fall out of the bottom. So we have to look at those elements. It's very important with this crop. Another problem we have when it comes to iron, just to point out, is too much phosphorus. It's usually not a problem for Arizona, but we do get people occasionally who will be very gung-ho and they over-apply or they over-ban their phosphorus, and it's usually more in your greenhouse operations. But too much phosphorus will actually block the uptake of iron as well, and it will cause your plants to turn yellow. So we gotta be careful. Just because it turns yellow doesn't mean the plants will turn yellow this way, and it can mean 3 or 4 different things. So we gotta look at the whole picture. Another problem is reduced stand. And you can kind of see in this picture, you've got, oops, wrong button. Sorry about that. You got a beautiful hemp plant, but look at all this open space around this plant. This was someone who seeded, and they had bad seed. It was their Verticillium and Fusarium, I can't remember at the time, and they had areas where there was no plants. They should have gone through and put transplants in to catch up, but they didn't have it in their budget at the moment. They want to see how things panned out. But if we have reduced stand, we're going to have less yield. We got to check our seed, and we got to make sure everything's okay. This is a very big problem. Usually our spacing that a lot of the growers I'm using is about 4 feet, but you can go bigger, you can go smaller, but usually they'll go 4 feet. But just make sure, again, make sure you've got the good, healthy seed. Make sure you got your nutrients perfected in your soil. Make sure you spoon feed them the nitrogen. If not, you can have reduced stand, and that's not going to be good. Yes, sir?
How many units of phosphate is sufficient?
So according to the literature and everything, they claim you want the pre-plant soil area to be around 20 parts per million in the soil. That equates to 40 pounds per acre. So when I look at reports, I will do actually math. I will say, okay, 20 minus whatever your nitrogen, your phosphorus value was. So say your soil report said 15 for easy math. I'll say, okay, 20 minus 15 is 5. Usually I multiply by 2 to convert pounds per acre from ppm, but because we can have anywhere from 80 to 99% tie-up in our soil due to high pH, I'll times it by 10. So if you had a soil phosphorus value of 15, I would actually recommend putting about 50 pounds of phosphorus per acre. That's not 50 pounds of a phosphorus fertilizer, whatever the label happens to say, that's 50 units of phosphorus. So if your product is 50% phosphorus, you have to put 100 in just to get those 50 pounds back. You gotta do some math. If you're not comfortable doing the math, ask your consultant, ask the lab. That's their job. If they aren't willing to do it for you, find someone who will. Another big problem we have is stress. And you can see this little guy, oops, I'm not used to this clicker. He's starting to flower. He's not very big. You can see how big the silage from the corn was prior, or is it cotton? Either way, he's itty bitty. This is also a sativa, not an indica. He's done for this season. So that's a lot of money, a lot of energy, and you're not going to get much back on him. The most common problems we're finding that are causing stress, some people actually do have low potassium. Most of the time, if you've got like 120 ppm, which equates to 230 pounds per acre in your field already of potassium, it's not enough for hemp. They like a little bit more in the ground. I try to keep it like around 170, 180 is what you want your pre-plant to be parts per million of potassium. Remember, potassium is used to help reduce heat stress, environmental stress. It's supposed to help the plant be stronger, healthier cell wall. So if you do get your grasshoppers or your worms, it helps reduce any damage or maybe ward them off, not to be chewed on. Remember, insects can find our weakest plants and they will feast on those guys till they're down in the ground. Strong, healthy plants usually have the least amount of damage done to them. So we keep our plants nice and healthy. The pests are out there. They're going to find them. But if our plants are healthier, maybe they can ward them off a little bit before we can treat it or we can harvest. A big problem, and I'm sure you're all whispering about it, is heat. These plants don't like the heat. They hate it. I've got growers, 2 of them, that claim they were the first ones to get their permits. I think they all planted around the 1st or 2nd of July. The hottest part of the year. They're seeding, and they're transplanting because egos get in the way. They have to be the first in the state. That's why they both are claiming the first in the state. And they actually did pretty good. The picture of the really good plant, that was from when he seeded the 2nd of July. I got a lot of phone calls every week. I'm getting text messages, I'm getting pictures. It's 8 o'clock at night. I'm responding to these guys. Plants don't stop growing and dying because it's after hours or it's a Saturday. You have to help your clients 24 hours a day. Just please not at 2 a.m. But either way, I lost my train of thought. Sorry. I go on growth trails all the time. Heat stress. If you seed, and there's actually companies in Arizona who are actually working on getting genetics for Arizona to make Arizona-grown seed so the plants will be viable for our area. You have to sprinkle irrigate them all the time until they germinate and they get about 3 or 4 inches. They're constantly putting water on almost every day, a couple times a day, to keep that ground wet. Because if you only seed about ½ inch down, in our heat, when it's 115 degrees outside, it dries out really, really fast, and we can't have that seed drying out. So a lot of the guys were sprinkling till they got it established, and then they switched over to either flood or they went through to drip, whatever they wanted to do. But once they got their stand established, they got off of drip, off of a spray as soon as they can, because as we all know, disease goes where water is, and so if the leaves are always wet, there's going to be a lot of disease on those, and that was the last thing they needed to fight. They're fighting heat, they're fighting grasshoppers, they're fighting soils that are salty and hot ground. They didn't want to have to deal with disease on top of it, at least not right away. Another problem they have is wind. We were lucky this year. May not think about it, but from up in Phoenix, I saw maybe 2 monsoons come through, no haboobs. Imagine if we had the storms like we did a couple years ago with the massive sand walls coming through. They would have sandblasted these plants to the ground. Sorry, it's time to pick up my kid from school. They would have sandblasted these plants down to the ground. And you got sandblasting and you've got hot temperatures. That would make it really difficult for these plants to come back. And that's why a lot of people wanted the transplants. It does have a taproot, so like we heard in the other presentation, make sure you got the plugs with good roots on the bottom so that taproot can do its job. If your taproot doesn't do its job, you're going to lose your crop because the plant's going to die. And so there's different things that we can do. We got to think outside the box to solve these problems. If you're going to deal with heat stress, now I know it wasn't our fault necessarily, I'm blaming the state. We couldn't get our permits till July, but if we can plant maybe April, May, when it's cooler, to get these plants established so that when the monsoons come through, they're anchored in the ground. They got bigger canopy, more place for shade, they're higher up the ground so it won't get sandblasted as bad. I'm hoping they'll do a better job. For growing hemp, we had a great year, temperature and weather-wise. Yeah, it was hot, but we didn't have the winds. Next year, I don't know if it's going to be as good for us. I'm hoping it will be, and it's something we can sustain. Some things that growers are doing is they're adding mulch to the surface to break up the soil surface to give these plants shade. They need to have shade. Other growers are actually putting sunscreen on them. I don't know what the names is. I don't sell these products, but I know in the citrus industry and in the melon industry, they spray white powder. I believe it's silica-based. I'm sure some of you gentlemen out there know exactly what I'm talking about. It's like sunscreen for your plants. If we can put that on our plants, it'll help keep them a couple degrees cooler. Maybe they'll do a little bit better with this high heat. Planting earlier, hopefully will also help. As far as wind goes, we gotta disturb the ground by putting some sort of mulch down, maybe more of a no-till system to keep that on there. On the other presentations, when they showed the furrows of tobacco, I don't know if any of you noticed, it wasn't a flat raised box. It was different. It was shaped like this, and it went down. If you plant down below, you got about 2-3 inches higher around on the outside of the furrow there. The wind will pass over it and leave those plants alone. You won't have the saltation happening. When I mean saltation, it's actually a wind term, not a salt term. You won't have the saltation happen, and those sand particles won't strip those plant leaves clean. I got other growers down in New Mexico. They grow wheat, they kill the wheat stalk, and they crop it. So it's about 3 inches taller than their hemp plants. And that hemp, the wheat stubble, they leave there all year round, and it causes a shade, and it causes a windbreak, so we don't strip these plants out. Keeps the ground just a few degrees cooler, so these plants are going to be okay. You just gotta think outside the box. So some solutions we can do: surround yourself with experts that actually know hemp. A lot of us are still learning. I'm always learning. I've been dealing with hemp and cannabis for over 5 years, and I'm still learning new things. Growing it inside versus outside is very, very different. I've got a grower who's growing hemp, same variety, same everything, inside and outside. We've done some testing on it. We're actually finding the THC concentrations lower in the field. I work with potency labs, and they've done some testing with them, and they've also confirmed too, we actually believe that the UV lights, the high light intensity, actually degrades some of the THC to keep the concentrations down. If you go into these dispensaries, products that have been on the shelf for a few months have lower concentrations because the lights are degrading the quality. That could be to our benefit to keeping THC down is our high intense sun. So I'm hoping that's the case. It's still a hypothesis out there I haven't tested. But surround yourself with experts that can give you these little weird tidbits of information that might help you. Maybe they won't, but you never know when you're going to find something that does pertain to you. And next, use your best management practices. I know you hear that in a lot of conferences, but it's true. We have to think outside the box to keep the ground cooler to plant these plants. And when I say think outside the box, I offered this to a few growers. A lot of them thought I was insane, but a couple of them took me up on it, and they're glad they did. Remember when we had all the alfalfa? It was a crappy year last year for alfalfa. We all had a crappy year. We got frost, and all the alfalfa had brown tops on it. We really couldn't sell it on the market, but we were kind of stuck with it, and we basically got bottom price for it just to get it off our fields. We all remember that? No head shaking. Am I the only one that grows alfalfa with people? Anyway, take that, green chop it, put that in your field as your organic fertilizer. It's full of nutrients, nitrogen, all these different things. It's organic matter. It'll keep the ground cooler. It'll help increase infiltration rate. It'll drop the pH of your soil without having to add chemicals. If you're growing organic, it's alfalfa. Hopefully you just grew it organically. And it'll provide your crop with everything it needs to get things going. The nitrogen, the phosphorus, the micronutrients, drop your pH. And it'll keep the ground cool because it's organic material that's more top dressed. So you kind of got to look around and figure out what you can do and brainstorm with people around you. Now I can go on each of these topics forever, but I am limited for time. So if anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. I know where the nutrients should be at pre-plant, about where they should be on the leaves. I can talk about pH for 2 hours, and I just don't want to do that to you guys. So please, any questions, let me know.
You all have information overload, so you don't have to worry about too much information from me. It's just more like an update of what's happening in Yuma. Don't kill the messenger. A little bit about me. I'm a Yuma transplant. I'm originally from Nepal, and pretty much 80% people in Nepal, they are born in farm and they are farmers. By training, I'm a molecular biologist. Is it not working? I spent quite a few years doing a lot of basic science in the lab, but I was always more happier in the field, so that's when I decided to be the extension plant pathologist. For Yuma County, I'm trying to build a plant pathology program. I do a lot of, most of the major responsibility of my program is to run the plant disease diagnostic, so everything else is related or tied up to the plant diagnostic clinic. So we're just a plant pathologist, trying to build my program, minding my own business, and we hear about the industrial hemp in Arizona, and I was very excited about it. The first reason is I grew up with hemp back in Nepal. I probably have consumed more hemp seeds than everyone in this room combined. The second, as a plant pathologist, I was really looking at the effect of growing hemp as a cover crop, how it does with the fusarium in lettuce. In the season after that, that was one of the main reasons I was excited to work in hemp. And the third reason was I had friends who were working on hemp, and they had like pretty pictures with hemp plants, and I really wanted one of those. And I started getting calls to go to the field, and this is what I get, and this is not working. And I get thrown into the field that looks like this. No pictures for me. But just to give you what's happening right now is, in an ideal world like North Carolina, the university would have pilot projects before that. They would do trials, they would do research, they would gather enough information to give it to the community, the growers, before the growers get the permit. What happened here is it happened the exact opposite. You guys got the permit before we were allowed to say hemp out of our mouth. So there is lack of research. There has absolutely not been any varietal trials. We don't know about the right planting time for our weather or climate, heat. We don't know any other culture practices like irrigation. And it happened sometime around July that more than half of the samples that were submitted in the plant disease clinic were hemp, and that's when hemp became my business. So this is what we're struggling at right now. We're struggling at the initial crop establishment to have the plants up in the ground and running. And of course, after that, we're gonna have to deal with the disease and pest problems. So to answer all the questions that you have, hopefully to address all the problems that you have, we're going to start a hemp pilot project. The idea is to do trials that will answer the immediate questions. So it's more like varietal trial. This is not working. So we're going to do varietal trials, planting the trials, different methods of planting, irrigation methods. And this is just an idea. This is something that we're going to get more ideas from the survey you guys filled up. Hopefully you all did. This will give us more idea about what to look at in terms of research. And we're also trying to look at the soil amendments because of the high pH that we have. Maybe adding organic matter would help with that. And a lot of people have been interested in doing the virus screening for seed-borne viruses, and that's something that we're looking to do. And also, we have to be inclusive, and we need to have a sustainable agri-system. So we also want to look at the industrial hemp for fiber and seeds. And educating the public about hemp. I know the kids can stop by, try to smoke it, and they won't get high, but we also do not want all the teenagers and adults stopping by every hemp fields, sniffing the flowers. So the goal is to provide you guys with the relevant, trial-based, scientifically supported facts about industrial hemp production. We're thinking to have 3 trial sites, about 2 years. And then the way we want to relay this information to you guys is by full day, so it is going to be more like an open access to all of you whenever you want to see what's happening in terms of research. So let's look at the heights. Of course, there's a very high need. We're already way behind in terms of research and providing you guys the relevant information. Of course, there's high enthusiasm. Everyone I asked, do you want to work on hemp? They said yes, which is a good thing. There's high return, and of course, it's a high need, so there's going to be a high impact of what we do. Let's talk about lows. One of the major problem we have is our garage, in this case, is funding. We're already behind. We're not allowed to write proposals on hemp. We're not allowed to get any grants. So even if we try writing grants now, by the time the grant opens for that particular crop, by the time we get it, it's going to be another year, if not 2. So we really don't have that much time to wait. And this is just like a snapshot of how much it takes to do a research project for 2 years. So this is what we're trying to do, and we want you all to support us, not just in terms of money, but in terms of resource, manpower, so we can do all of this together. So the other thing is, what if we do all of that and we still cannot grow hemp in here? So we've been talking to a lot of people, going to the field, looking at the seed plants, And one theory that we have that had already been mentioned before is we are in the no hemp zone. That's the 45 parallel where hemp is known to grow. So we're running through some ideas, what can we do? And we're looking at developing a cultivar specifically for our area. But as you can see here, it takes a lot of time and a lot of money. We're literally talking about $1 million baby in here. But if we can do that, we're gonna have a variety or cultivar that is very specific for our heat, our sun, our latitude, our soil, everything that is customized for us. We're working with some collaborators to do to finish the legal procedure, because you can breed your own cultivars in your greenhouse, but when you are going to release it for as a commercial variety, it takes a lot of time and a lot of legislation thing. But so all I can say for now is this is going to be a collaboration with seed companies. So I know we have some representatives from seed companies here, so please have your people talk to our people. So in the meanwhile, let's try to focus on what we can do with the information that we have, the resources that we have. I've been just putting some bad news in here, so I just wanted to give some good news that some of the growers, they have harvested in a field that looks like this, and we've heard that they still made money out of it. So you are not gonna lose your money. You won't get the best $25,000 to $30,000 per acre in return, but you're not gonna lose your money. So there's hope. The other thing is, you're not gonna lose your money, but it still is a huge risk, especially for the first couple of years until we acclimatize the crop in our environment. In our environment, it's still a high risk, high reward crop. It is not because your PCA is not doing a good job that your plants are dying. It's because it's a new crop for us, but our environment is also new for the crop. So there are too many variables to pinpoint that is it the weather, is it the soil, is it the water, too many to pinpoint now. So what you can do is, be your own researchers. We are behind, we're trying to catch up, but please start everything small. Do not plant 10,000 acres without knowing what's gonna come out of it. Plant few acres, better plant in beds and see how it responds to different months and different weather. And split the field treatments. If you are doing a sprinkle irrigation in part of the field, try and see if you can do forward irrigation and see the difference, and keep everything else the same, and you will know that, okay, sprinkle works better than furrow, or etc. And also, since fusarium is such a big problem, this is something I'm requesting you to do. If you are going to grow hemp, and if you have been growing lettuce, and especially if you are growing lettuce that has fusarium in it, that you know that there is high incidence of fusarium, please grow hemp in the same land for the next few years. Do not introduce lettuce, because we all know that we're struggling a lot with fusarium, and there's no magic solution for that. And we all know one of the main reasons that we can't get rid of fusarium is because we're growing fusarium year after year. So every year we're giving the fusarium, the pathogen, exactly what it needs and how it needs. So if you can, since we have a plant that you want to grow, so please grow just hemp and other crops, but do not introduce lettuce for a few years, and see how it does with the fusarium population or the fusarium wilt problem, because this is something I can't do, but that's something that you can do, and maybe our answer is there in crop rotation. And of course, this is a time when you can do all the crazy stuff and no one's gonna think you're high, do all the overthinking, and change up. Don't do the same thing over and over again. You see a field like that, you're gonna grow the same crop, same variety, same produce in the field next year. Might as well use twice the number of plants, and you're gonna get twice as much the produce. And when in doubt, scout. That's what Dr. Palumbo says, and I added that. Take the 6 plants out. You see that plant in there? I don't know where the pointer is. Okay, you see that plant in there? it's not doing well. It could be a virus, it may be not. Either way, you are not going to get a whole lot of ill from it. But if it's a virus and you get insect infestation in the field, and you can barely use any fungicide or pesticide in there, that plant right there is basically acting as a reservoir for the epidemic to happen in your field. And it's a risk that you don't want to take. There's no reward in there. And so whenever you see any plant that doesn't look normal, that looks sick, please just get rid of it. Any problem in the field that we have, that you need a plant diagnosed, you can send it to my lab. You can get the form in all those 3 places. And if you want us to come see in the field, just give us a call and we'll try to be there as soon as we can. So, a big thing, please communicate. You see a field that's doing well, ask them what they're doing. You see a field that is not doing well, ask them what did they do wrong. Take one for the team, learn from other people's mistakes. I know I'm supposed, part of my job is to communicate, relay the information, but it's so more effective when you guys do it within yourself. Please communicate. And support the research programs. We are already behind on it. It doesn't have to be my program. Anybody that is trying to do research, please support them. You have a field that has plants 2 feet apart that look like this, came from the exact same place. It's only a researcher or who put their mind in it that they can tell you what's wrong with that. And it's not my favorite word, but we've been married to lettuce and spinach for so long. We can grow lettuce in our sleep, and we're trying to date this hemp because it's a catch. But the thing is, we have forgotten all the struggle and the effort that we need when we have a new crop. So we did not become the lettuce capital overnight. So this is going to take some time too. So that was it for the presentation part. I'd like to thank the speakers for taking time out of their busy schedule to be here, and everyone in Cobra Extension and Yuma Ag Center. I have friends, collaborators in University of Florida and Clemson University who has been helping me with this whole hemp thing. And Bert, our farm superintendent, and the booth machinery, we didn't think this far. We didn't know that there was going to be so many people. And I'm sorry I didn't answer 50 of you for like a week because we didn't know what to do. So at the very last moment, we decided to change the venue, and we're able to accommodate all of you. So thank you, Bert. Thank you, booth. And of course, the sponsors. One of the major duty in my other duties as assigned is begging. So I've been pretty good at begging, and you all are like really even better at giving. So this whole concept came up because the JV Farms and Helena Agri were willing to chip in for the cost. And when we had too many people interested, we had Marone Bioscience chip in at the very last moment, like 5 days before the event. So you all could attend. So thank you. And of course, thank you everyone for all the enthusiasm you have shown through us hemp production. Oh, that's it. And then, and there's a panel discussion. Please do not leave. Anyone who has grown hemp, please. I'll let that Russ do that.
Yes, from our perspective, this is probably the most important part of the program. So if you have any experience with hemp, if you're willing to share any of your experience with hemp, I would be more than willing to give you an opportunity right now to kind of tell us what you've found, what's been good, what's been bad. If anyone wants to step forward and kind of relay that information, it'd be very appreciated. If not, and if you don't want to do it in this kind of setting, please get a hold of Bindu and share with her so that she can help return this to the community. So what we're going to do right now is just kind of open it up for questions and answers, and all of our experts are here, so you can ask any question you have of any one of the presenters and hopefully get some of the answers that you're looking for. So if you've got a specific question, please don't hesitate to ask. We're all going to learn from the questions you ask. So at this point, I'll just kind of open it up. Anybody has any questions, we'll pass the microphone around to whoever you want to ask a question to.
The most credible source for seeds? I don't know where to start off.
So he's asking about credible sources for seed. There are a lot of options. I mentioned some of the countries that you can deal with previously. But basically, you're looking for a place that can send you a bag that has a certification tag of some sort. You know, it's going to be different than a U.S. certification tag, but most countries have a seed certification. When you're talking about CBD varieties, though, there really aren't a lot of other countries in the game. Most of it's being produced here in the U.S. Canada has just now come online with their legalization of industrial CBD production. So I would say for oil varieties, you're going to be looking domestically for the most part. There's so many other countries that deal with recreational and medicinal marijuana that they don't dabble really in the CBD oil market. I would say a huge majority of CBD varieties are coming from Oregon CBD, and maybe you can speak to some other varieties and some other groups.
A lot of my clients have been in Kentucky. The University of Kentucky's been doing research on them for a long time. And they're getting seed there. I got some guys are getting seed as cheap as 60 cents a seed. Some guys are paying $6 a seed. But I would call the University of Kentucky while we're getting there for seeds.
University of Kentucky.
Yeah, I think at this point, so I always advise right now, because we're so new at this, is to not seed your CBD fields. Transplant them. I think you're going to get way better results when you do that. We've had a lot of failures with direct seeding. If you're good at it and you get really good quality seed, because we have a lot of bad seed out there, that's one thing. Starts are really the best way of doing it. Oregon and CBD, I just toured Jupiter Seed, which is in just west of Portland, Oregon. They've got a really nice facility out there. Hopefully they'll have some good genetics come on. And then there's 6 or 7 different people around the United States that are quality. It's hard to find those people, I'm sure. The best thing to do is get a whole bunch of different seed varieties, okay? Grow them in your greenhouse. Grow them out, see how they are. Try to flower inside your greenhouse first, and then move out into the field. I mean, the problem is the genetic variation is so wide right now, and to have 3% CBD or 5% CBD or 15% CBD, these numbers are all over the place. And what works in Oregon or Colorado is not going to necessarily work in North Carolina. As we saw, we have a lot of failures happening in South Carolina, in North Carolina, but may not be well suited for Arizona as well. And then also what I'd be looking for is to have high CBD value auto flowers. I'd try to get some of that to play around with those genetics as well.
I can't get the client's name out, but I have a couple people who are working to get certified seed and be a seed company in Arizona, growing Arizona seed. It may take them 1 or 2 years. It doesn't help you now, but there are people in the process of getting Arizona homegrown seed to be certified. It's just going to take some time.
So I have a question. Actually, I have 3 questions. First off, when we're shipping leaves or flowers to the lab, is that legal? Put it through mail?
So I called the Arizona Department of Agriculture to find out myself. It says, a lab, what certifications and permits do I have to purchase so I can test leaves and soil of hemp plants? And I was told that there are no regulations for laboratories at this time right now. I get leaf samples in the mail by the post office a lot. And they've never gotten in trouble. There is First Class Shuttle in Yuma that ships samples to me, and sometimes there are hemp plants, hemp leaves in, or soil samples. I think it'd be a great question for you. I don't know if they can get past the inspection station coming out of Yuma. That is my one concern.
Thanks. Yeah, that's one area that's part of the regulations. Was the way the regulations are right now is it's kind of a gray area. There's nothing that defines that you can or cannot. transport those hemp samples. However, we just kind of recommend and advise that if we're going to be transporting hemp samples, that you have all that documentation as far as making a licensed grower, that it is a sample under a custody seal from the grower to that laboratory, so hopefully there shouldn't be any issues. We are working with Customs Border Protection, DPS, currently on how to address some of those issues. So our growers and processors and our licensees aren't facing any sort of taint or anything like that resulting from samples, harvested crops, seed, or anything like that.
Brian, are you going to be putting out a list of state-approved labs?
The Arizona State Agricultural Laboratory, they're the ones that are going to be certifying the labs, so they're the ones that will have that list.
Is there going to be a link? Can you put a link to them on your site?
There is.
Okay.
And we had this discussion, and it's related directly to Bindu, transporting samples from the field to our lab. I think probably the safest thing to do is those growers that have a permit, they have the permission to transport, right, with the permit. So what we've told her is probably the best scenario would be to ask the grower to bring the sample to the lab.
That would probably be best.
It'll get better with time. That was how we transported in the first year, is that the farmer had to deliver. But since then, United States Postal Service, FedEx, and UPS all have put out directives that they will transport properly marked materials. Don't try to hide what it is. Put your documentation in there. So legally, you can send it through the mail without any problem. But local law enforcement and local agencies don't necessarily have the trickle down from above at this point. So that's where you're running into trouble.
I have a question. Can I use my APHIS permits, which I send to clients and have them use that permit to mail me samples?
I don't know what you're referring to, so.
APHIS samples allow me to get samples anywhere in this world except for Antarctica. And it's a state, federal organization that regulates samples being transported, can use that temporarily to get samples to a laboratory.
Again, I still don't know what your APHIS is. Is that the Arizona, is that the animal plant?
Yeah.
So USDA APHIS certification. Well, still, it's a hemp material. It's regulated under the hemp program. And like I said earlier, that's kind of a gray area at this point. It wasn't addressed directly in the laws and regulations. So that's why we're just kind of advising that, how the samples are transported, sent to a laboratory, that all the documentation is submitted with that. Making sure it's sent in a seal, that it's a plant sample for analysis. But a federal permit wouldn't apply to the state program.
Second question. We touched on it briefly, but can you expand on pH, soil pH?
Sure. So you can grow hemp at almost any pH. When I give recommendations for soil for hemp, my goal is to have it below 7.8, maybe 7.5, because when the pH dictates the nutrient availability of nutrients in the soil, as well as the soil biology that's going on in the soil. Some bacteria or fungal prefer certain pH ranges. Your phosphorus is going to be more available at a low pH. Other nutrients are going to be more available at a high pH. And so my goal is to get the pH below 7.8, 7.5, because that is when nitrogen is least tied up in the soil. A lot of people will say 6.5 to 5.5 is where you want your pH to be in your soil. When our soils are naturally between 8.2 and 9, that is very expensive to hit the ground and hit it hard, organically or chemically, with enough sulfur to get the pH that low. Then with the carbonates and bicarbonates in our irrigation water, within 4 to 6 months, our pH is going to pop right back up. So it's a very expensive fight that we'll never win. And so what I do is I look at the nutrients in the soil and see how how far can we lower it financially, what the grower's willing to do, without causing any nutrient toxicities. If the lower we lower the pH, the manganese, the iron, the zinc, the copper, the phosphorus, they all be increasing in availability. Arizona is natural zinc and manganese blue in our desert. If you're high organics, our soils are full of these micronutrients, but they're tied up in our soil because our pHs are high. If we drop the pH too low, we are going to toxify our soil with all these micronutrients and our plants will not grow. So we have to use pH as a tool to figure out where it needs to be, where our plants can grow, where they have the best nutrient availability. I've got growers that are in pH of 8.8, 6.5, and their plants look beautiful and they're doing great. It's what your comfort zone is. So some people who've grown cannabis for so long, they have it stuck in their head, they have to have it acidic. And so when I get comments out there, I make a comment to get it low at 7.5, because I'm trying to make everybody happy. I've got growers, like I said, I have growers that are watermelons at pH of 10.2. You're supposed to grow them at pH of 5. They've got the best yield, the best melons ever. And they ship them to New York. You don't even get to eat them. And if you can grow any crop at any pH, it's managing the nutrient availability of your soil that's going to dictate how well your crops are. Higher pH just might mean you have to add a bit more inputs or a little bit all the time so you don't get massive tie-up. I hope that answers your question.
That was fantastic. My last question is, what is customer demand and where is the industry headed with regards to GMO, hemp, or this type of chemical?
I don't know on that one. I do know that there are a lot of people trying to grow organic hemp, and the ones that are struggling who are taking virgin soil and making them organic because they have a record of no chemicals. It's very difficult to grow organic hemp on very skillful soil. It takes a lot more energy and inputs that you may not get the return on investment for about 2 to 3 years to get your soil to where it needs to be if you're growing organic hemp because of cost issues when you have a skeletal soil. The demand for it, I don't know. I do know on the cannabis side, they love the RV, organic, non-GMO. On the hemp side, because you can't cross that line where it's being sold, that's going to be up to marketing and Facebook. Depending on the demand of the people and what kind of word we spread.
Yeah, as far as genetically modified anything these days, I think there's a real low tolerance for it, to be honest with you. And I don't see it in hemp and cannabis anytime soon. Question back here?
Yeah. As a reputable established transplant producer based in California, what extra protocol will we have to follow to deliver hemp transplants to Arizona?
Hemp transplants come to Arizona. So hemp transplants will be treated just like same sort of nursery stock or plant material. So basically you have to be meeting our plant entry card requirements for quarantine, so no matter what state, California, or coming in with a nursing certification, along with your other original documentation for the hemp side, the THC analysis, and comes from a hemp producer, also meeting those phytosanitary requirements. States that may be under quarantine for Japanese needles or imported fireman's, they'll also have to meet those additional requirements in order to ship material as transplants into Arizona. And vice versa, actually shipping out of Arizona for those that are will be producing transplants in the state to ship to other states. They'll have to get have the very bare minimum a nursing certification just to attest to the plant cleanliness. And if there's a state that they're looking to ship to, they'll have to look to see if there's any quarantine requirements for them in order to ship plant products to that state.
Essentially standard operating procedures.
Correct. Now there's another question that probably is going to come up is when I go to harvest and I'm sending to a processor outside the state.
Yes, sending any sort of biomass to a processor in another state, it will depend on what that other state requires as far as the documentation, if there's any sort of shipment inspections required to go along with it. In order to ship it out, it has to be any sort of sealed truck or something like that. Who knows? You just have to find out what they require and go from there. Plant material that's coming into this state, we do require that again, meeting the initial requirements for coming from a grower, hemp grower in the certified analysis and getting below 0.3% THC. And then if it's that it isn't under a shipping certificate, so we know that some department, agency, had looked at that before it did come across the station.
All right, I've got another one for Matt. What's your personal experience with a fiber-wrapped transplant plug, i.e. the Elipot system or plantation production for industrial transplants?
I don't have much experience at all with that type. Yeah, everything I've seen so far is in 72 trays, 72 square trays, what do you call them?
We do have that Elipot in the root binding study, so pay attention late this season for that data to come out, and you can at least see what that looks like. We did have a lot of roots come out of that Elipot on the late, those 45-day and 60-day plugs, and grow into the neighboring ones. So that's a challenge if you're using a traditional transplanter, I think. If you wait too long and they start to grow into one another, depending on what kind of division you have. The trays we had, they were just Elipots stacked side by side by side. Is that how you're?
We're actually using a single cell Elipot tray with cell walls. And
so if they have walls, you should be okay, but then you would still, if they have a wall, you still have the issue of twisting around in those, especially since they're a rounder shape. So just look for that data to come out, at least on what it did in the root binding test. But that's the only place we have the Elipot.
Yeah, as far as production of starts for growers, typically what I like to see, I've seen a lot of transplants around the country right now. Some are good, some are bad. I'd like to have a little bit more root system as far as like the actual soil. So there's root system, but there's still some soil left over, and those white roots are kind of hanging out. That's the optimal when you go to transplant. So a 72 cell tray personally is kind of like the smallest I would be going into, and I've heard smaller. If you can get them to the 55 or somewhere right around in the 50 cell trays, I feel like that gets a better start to the plant, which I've seen around the country, specifically if you're transplanting to fields that are not plasticulture. Yes, question?
I don't know, but I'll just shout. What starting media would you recommend for the desert climate, since we have clay and loamy soils?
That's a great question.
Because the cannabis industry has boomed so well, and I hope I don't insult anyone by saying this, and I'm afraid I insult people, I apologize. I find that a lot of the peat moss and core quality has gone downhill substantially. It is very, very salty. The claim that it is washed, I think it washed in ocean water. A lot of times these materials are coming from areas that have a lot of calcium nitrate in them. So they're buffering it with calcium nitrate. And when I've tested all these materials raw out of the sack, and the nitrate values can be anywhere from 200 to 800 parts per million. They will fry your transplants. If you're growing cannabis, live growers who grow cannabis have to flush the soil for 3 weeks before they put their transplants clones into them, or they will have 50% yield loss right off the bat. It's very salty. Rock wool is actually more inert. It will not have that salt burn on them compared to these other products. You might find a company out there that has washed it and prepped it decently for hemp, but a lot of times more that rock wool and inert materials are better. If the plugs are very small, like a 1 square inch or whatnot, your plants are going to grow out of it. They're going to be okay because your roots are going to establish and it's going to grow fast. It's not like you're putting a rock wool ball that's 1 foot by 1 foot in there. It's too expensive. You wouldn't want to do that anyway. So as long as they're smaller pieces and you can do it that way, you're in better shape.
Our growers have had good success with cocoa wool as well, if it's available here. Not also a fairly inert material. And lighter mixes, no matter where you're going, lighter mixes are going to be better than those heavier mixes that you would normally see for vegetable transplants. Those heavier mixes hold too much water for those young clones or seedlings.
Just keep in mind, you want your sodium to be below 400 parts per million. Your salinity, your EC, whatever you want to call it, the SEC in the world, less than 4. A lot of your vegetables, your lettuces, like around 300 or 3. If you're growing cannabis, it could handle 8 to 12. It could handle almost 2,000 parts per million. But these hemp guys, they cannot. You have to have the salts very low, especially when they're little. When they get bigger, they'll be fine. But when you're first starting out, you will fry them very easy.
How many transplants are you looking to produce exactly?
Well, it's a very small scale. We haven't even decided.
Oh, okay. Then I would just, honestly, I would just go get a reputable Coca-Cola perlite bag and just go straight up with that.
Be careful with perlite. That stuff's getting nasty. It's on a bag and it toxifying research will start over. So just what I recommend is even EC meter at home in your facility. Just do like 1 to 5, 1-to-1 ratio with some DIR. Check your ECs on it. If the EC is below 2 or 3, you're good to go. If it's really salty, just blend it with something more inert, like vermiculite or something else like that.
The other thing you can do is Jiffy Pop. There's these little Jiffy starters that you can buy in a lot of these big box stores and also the Hydra stores. They work great. They work great, especially for starting seed.
Ask for a free sample. Test it on one of them.
Experts. Any other questions out there? Okay, well, we'll be around for a little bit. You got any more questions directly to us, feel free to shoot us up. Thanks so much.
Thank you guys. Thank you all for coming. We'll get one more round of applause for these guys and their time.